The protagonist could not fall asleep. He was thinking about his energy. If he was boundless, then can it be used to fulfill human desires? With pain full of pain, he could not understand whether honesty and justice would be achieved. Closing his eyes, the man has bitterly recognized that his ideals had not come true. That night, Zhang Li made a transition to a new world where he took 500 years to reach the highest level of cultivation. During the Mahayana period, he became a modern emperor and the first person on the continent of 9 regions. The figure of the hero illuminated the daytime sunlight. Zhang Li climbed into the sky over the city's inhabitants so that it was visible throughout the district. People were looking forward to the moment when the emperor began to overcome the sorrow to be immortal. It was extremely interesting for young people to appear whether a ladder in the sky would appear this time to move to the degree of immortal. Suddenly, a black and red lightning appeared from the sky which aimed at Emperor Zhang Li. She enveloped the main character from head to toe, trying to harm his body. A massive crater appeared at the scene of the lightning strike, which released dark smoke from the inside. The sun clearly illuminated the figure of Zhang Li. The guy stood completely unharmed, but the heavenly ladder still did not appear. People have sympathized with the hero, because he, over the 15th time, overcomes sorrow to be immortal. Someone even began to doubt whether there was an eternity kingdom. One man assured that it really was, because the old conservatives said they saw a ladder in the sky, which means that it is pure truth. Thousands of years ago, 9 regions were filled with immortal. As soon as heavenly sorrow was overcome, the kingdom lowered the ladder into the sky, meeting cultivators. But for an unknown reason, the deity is not lowered into the sky now for the emperors, so the path to rise was cut off. Zhang Li was unfortunate that he moved into the world of immortal, even without the opportunity to ascend. The hero had no connection, so he had to rely entirely on himself. Knowledge and luck, overcoming various difficulties, led it to the Mahayana period. If a man had some advantages from the world, there would be fewer such winding paths. Yet Zhang Li considered it unimportant, because all these bypasses did not bring him any pleasure. The function of calculating information about the media has suddenly turned on. The hero saw system windows with information about his full name, about his 518 years of age, and about his position of the emperor of the present. The image with its cultivation is also highlighted. Now this is Mahayana. Zhang Li sighed proudly, saying that now it is somehow late for the emergence of the system. He appeared in front of him that this repeat system helps the carrier to defeat all those who look at him. After that, she suggested that he accept a newcomer gift bag, which the hero agreed. The man received 10 high-quality pills that had a miraculous effect during quenching, and 1 powerful pill that helped to achieve the perfect layout of the bases during this period. He also appeared in front of the victory. This is the teaching of Taoism, which can help to become invincible, but it requires 100,000 outgoing points to study it. Zhang Li studied the received artifact and found that he was now quite empty on the balance. The man asked the system whether she was not mistaken with a gift pack for a newcomer, because all these things were needed for the quenching period, and he should be presented with the initial set of Mahayana. In response, he received that no mistakes were found, so he asked what his level of cultivation. The system replied that he is now in Mahayana, so the hero asked what level this gift package would fit. She reported that it was for the hardening period and added that no mistakes were found. Zhang Li realized that this dialogue was pointless and decided to ask any more. He came information about publishing tasks for a newcomer who cannot be abandoned or escaped. In the next window, there was a message about the punishment for failure, namely, the inability to enable other functions of the system. The list included a store, the use of spiritual energy, the avoidance of internal demons, and spatial movement. The last point particularly attracted the attention of the main character, so he continued to read further. Zhang Yixin, using his position of the son of an elder, repeatedly mocked her husband, so his first task was to defeat this boy. The emperor recalled that it happened just when he only made the transition to this world. The previous owner of this body was born into a Zhang family in Jinkan during a Zhou dynasty. The hero was the son of an elder of the clan, but unfortunately, his parents died young. Zhang Yixin, the son of a new head, was one of the most talented in the whole clan and, using his status, often mocked others, especially Li. The original owner was cowardly and did not dare to resist but only called back, but finally died of a strong fire. When the man made a transition, he quickly assessed the situation and decided that staying in this clan would only harm, so he fled from home. Li knew that the talent of Zhang Yixin would maximize it would reach the period of laying of the basics, which means that the length of his life would be about 140 years. So by this time, the guy should be dead. And most importantly, it was that this task is not able to accomplish a newcomer now. Zhang Li asked what the era is now, to which he received the answer that now 4,300 years of flame era. Now the hero did not seem strange that the system was called reduction, because it was broken and was activated with a delayed 500 years. A man would like to change the task, but he was refused. Zhang Li did not understand logic, because his purpose was already dead. But the mechanics repeatedly repeated that the standard of time was determined by it. He did not think it would be appropriate to fight with Zhang Yixin, which either on the hardening period or on the establishment. The hero tried to restart the system, but he only published what he had to accomplish at tasks for a newcomer. The man felt unlawful even when he heard the name, because he is the number one in 9 regions, so whom he needed to repel. Zhang Li asked the system if it could send it to the kingdom of the immortal, and whether spatial movement was needed. His guesses were correct. The hero received the answer that in the future, he would open a function that can teleport the carrier to the desired place. A cat's loyal man began to be pleased with the system to move him there right now. However, he was repeated that the task was to first. The hero added that if he was transferred to the kingdom of the immortal, he will be able to go to hell, find Zhang Yixin, and overcome him. Zhang Li did not understand why the system demanded to kill the dead from it, but again repeated the request of the carrier to complete the mission. Now the protagonist realized why this mechanic was called broken, because she behaves unreasonable. And he acknowledged that he would have to return to his home. Although Zhang Yixin was ordinary, he took a longevity pill, and perhaps under the guidance of the master, he managed to break through the period of Yanin, increasing the length of his life. Li relied not only on difficult practice, but also on the meager assistance of the heavenly spiritual roots and the body of the infinite Tao, so that as a result of cultivation, the Mahayana period is reached. Subsequently, the hero reached the price located in Dazhou, where the Zhang family was located. Arriving at the temple, the man learned that his relative was still dead and didn't understand what to do to him now. The solution to this problem could be to find someone with the same name or the search for a volunteer ready to change their name to Zhang Yixin and be beaten. Li watched the temple and noticed that his relative's grave was still often visited. He drew attention to the old man with a wooden stick and noticed something quite familiar in his face. In this person, the appearance of Zhang Yixin was vaguely viewed. He was either his son or a grandson. Li became wondering whether the beating of this old man instead of his original purpose would be counted. The city gathered a huge number of people heading to the foot of the statue. The figure of this architectural product of the massive size belonged to the Emperor Zhang. One new moon knees before the statue and asked for a blessing to overcome a narrow place in the path of cultivation. Parents brought their children to give them the Zhang Emperor and catch his spiritual energy. The man began to tell his daughter that the history of the ruler originates in their 9 regions, where he was treated with deep respect. The duty of the emperor was to mediate between the sects of each region to prevent the deadly duels of the immortal as the people could suffer from it. If 2 people who have reached the limit of cultivation will not fight each other, but to death, it will bring a catastrophe to the continent of 9 regions. When the old emperor died and the new one has not been elected, the ancient sects were confronting with the ruling dynasty, which complicated the situation. And only after Zhang Li was declared a new ruler, at the desire of the people, he destroyed ancient sects and killed the ruler of the dynasty to stop the massacre in 9 regions. The man believed that the emperor was good, although he could compare many countries with the earth, but did not do so, but instead allowed them to develop and still continues to keep peace and silence on the continent. Eating sweets, Li thought that it was not, because in reality it was simply unprofitable. People who seek immortality and a long life have courage, and militant and blind oppression is a stupid solution in the long run, so it is necessary to give cultivators the way to struggle. The former emperor allowed the ruling dynasties and sects of the continent of 9 regions to grow to encourage them to competition. And it is for this reason that geniuses appear a continuous flow. It also formed the way. The continent of 9 regions consists of thousands of small countries and 9 large dynasties. Among them, only those whose states have existed for thousands of years and have survived, such as Dachzhou dynasty, where the Zhang family is located. On the other hand, the emperor noticed that there are pyrotechnics in large quantities. The huge sculpture of his figure before him and hundreds of people radiated the power of faith. Although, unfortunately, the man had little to use it after the Mahayana period has reached. He is also specifically cast by a bronze tripod to preserve people's wishes to save them for the next emperor. Zhang Li approached the merchant of sweets and asked for 2 more candied apples. The man noticed a crowd of people near one of the buildings. They were dissatisfied that the city's lord had not yet sent a detachment in search of their children and did not argue by traders. The monk opened the gate and shouted to the people approaching the day of commemoration of the ancestors of the Zhang family. So now everyone is busy and cannot do their affairs. People were incredibly annoyed that they could not even allocate one person to help. The cultivator stopped the angry man and advised not to make nonsense, because if they were grabbed at the entrance, then no longer get out. Li came up and asked what happened. He was explained that these people came from the nearest settlements. The man added that the children of the arrivals were lost. They searched them everywhere and, after all, reached Jinchan's. The hero was annoyed that Lord had no other cases except the commemoration of the ancestors of the Zhang clan. The cultivator excitedly advised the guy to stop carrying the delusion. The man warned him not to get into his business, because he believed that it was not what he could handle. Li was disappointed hearing such words because in general, he is here Emperor Zhang. Then the hero showed his rare ring designed to store and carry things. The cultivator knew that such a thing could not be worn by an ordinary person. The man was stunned by the fact that the guy before him pulled the token of the sect of Tao and called Zhang Li. Seeing that the senior intends to deal with this issue, he decided to tell him the details, so they went away. A traveling cultivator named Yun Wuxing just passed by, and, noticing the sad position of these people, tried to help them in search. The investigation was extremely shocked. The location of the missing children was established. They all disappeared. The neighboring cities have been around for about 200 years, and every time the Zhang family begins to commemorate ancestors, the disappearances repeatedly. The most suspicious was that all the missing ones are babies who have not been even a year old. The emperor understood what this cultivator hinted at, but the man began to assure that he had no significant evidence, and he would not dare to say something like that. It was unclear how the lord of a miserable price died in it, because few people would risk to confuse with the Zhang family throughout the country. Among the 9 large dynasties, only Dachzhou is special. The fate of the country is related to the law, and its management is carried out in accordance with it. However, if the ruler learns that someone is breaking the law and does not punish the guilty, it will affect the country's fate, and in vague times, it can even destroy the ruler. The cultivator said that these words can be said anywhere in Dachzhou, except for the Zhang family. It was rumored that the Emperor Zhang is selfless, but no one can guarantee that he has no selfish intentions about his family, because she is able to act insidiously. They even said that the head gave consent. Li replied that, as far as he knows, the ruler left the house 500 years ago and never returned to the family, so he could not be connected with it in any way. However, the cultivator suggested that it was all to create an image of a selfless person, because it is likely that he was secretly returning here at least once. The hero reminded the man of the evidence, and he confirmed that he could not find any of the hooks. He also remembered that if the child does not die with his death, then there is an insult. However, Yun Wuxing felt anything like this, although it would be difficult to hide with so many missing children. That is why the cultivator thought that he may have made a mistake in his conclusions. The hero listened to his words with a patient look. Then he looked at his sculpture and answered the man that he was right, because it was impossible to judge good people without evidence. After a while, the hero rose high into the sky, from which all the corners of the city were visible. He covered the territory of 100 miles in his divine consciousness to find out what is happening here. However, the emperor did not find any anomalies in the outskirts of the city or beyond. In the evening, Zhang Li finally managed to detect something, namely, distortion of space. Prior to that, he began to think that he could not find anything today, so he was glad first success in his search. The distortions were in the backyard of the Jiang residence. This meant that the family hid the spatial knot. It could not be found until someone came out of it. So it is not surprising that the emperor did not notice anything unusual when he went there during the day. In the spatial node, the hero saw the same old man whom he met in the funeral hall. When the man left the territory, Zhang Li immediately moved to the distorted place and attacked his palm. In front of him was the entrance inside, from which the stone path extended forward. At the final point to which the path led, there were mutilated bodies of babies lying in puddles of blood among human skulls. The Zhang family went on a merciless road with a bloody sacrifice of babies stolen from neighboring cities. Everyone was aware that the use of a demonic path to splicing one person is an absolute taboo in the world of cultivation. Zhang Li saw that all babies were dead. He hoped to save at least one or two surviving. The emperor did not return here for 500 years, so he believed that the guilt lies on him. In the house of the family, the ancestor questioned, because he said that he was going to a solitude in order to reach the limit of the period of Yanin. But he returned too quickly, so the man wondered if the divine transformation reached. The old man replied that it seemed much more difficult than it seems, so he ordered to go and bring him more babies. Right now, the parents of the missing children have staged a scandal in the price, and even some stray cultivators joined the investigation. So if the man turns out, they will clearly suspect something. The old man ordered just to grab these manga and also let them on a bloody sacrifice, thus reuniting them with his children. Li also advised the man to meet his parents so that they could reunite, because in fact, he should not stand and talk here now. Jiang Yixin was frightened by the unexpected visit of a man who even went around his perception. The emperor clenched his fist and sent him to the elderly old man with a serious expression. The destruction has reached incredible scale, and the noise from them spread to neighboring cities. The nearest homes near the family were destroyed completely, and dust from destruction spread further. The exposed clan was frightened by the fact that the man did not even use spells, and these consequences were from a normal blow. People who stood nearby could not understand what was happening in the Jiang family. They even thought it was an earthquake. The crippled old man addressed the boy with threats that he did not even know who he is, because the emperor is his brother. Zhang Li, dissatisfied with the ruler's cousin, whether he should not really be dead for a long time. Throwing a memorial plate, he continued to ask if she does not belong to him, and if so, who is talking to now? The emperor realized that, when he sacrificed the blood of infants and cultivating the demonic path, Jiang Yixin reached the limit of the Yanin period and was able to survive until now. The old man asked the man how he dared to attack him if he knew that the ruler was his cousin. Li guessed that the city's lord protects Jiang Yixin and the surrounding lords close on all eyes, and even the above, standing head of the district, retains silence. Everyone could think that since the emperor and the old man, blood relatives, it's quite logical that he wants his cousin to die of old age, and so no one dares to touch him. The heroes were wondering whether the head of the Dachzhou dynasty would dare to touch the members of the Jiang family. He felt the presence of another person and told her that if it had already come, then it was not necessary to stand aside, watching the performance. Zhou believed that the emperor had overdone a little, because even a few neighboring lord residences were half destroyed. But in fact, the hero defeated the dirty place in which Jiang Yixin was hiding and showed him the crowd. No longer need to spend time searching for evidence to accuse the old man. It was a shame to the emperor that he faced such a serious crime that occurred under his reign. 500 years did not interfere with family affairs. No one stopped his relatives, so they began to harm ordinary people. That is his fault. He turned to the people and said that he was really sorry that all this had happened under the banner of his title. People immediately recognized the Holy Emperor Jiang Li and began to kneel. Yun Wuxing was surprised that he really talked to the ruler, but could not understand where the Tao sect was token. Jiang Yixin fell on his knees and began to assure that he didn't kill these babies, emphasizing that there were no children's images on it. The old man committed a very serious crime, which is why the Lai Emperor invited Zhou's brother here. The cultivator realized what is the matter. Everything through the ways of time, practicing the imperial family of Dachzhou. Members of the dynasty family are able to reveal the truth about anything. Moreover, Zhou is known for strictly compliance with the laws, never such that the top was constantly forgive and punished. The ruler of the dynasty said Zhang Yixin that he would enter into a time and clearly see all his actions and actions. And after the sentence, according to the laws of Dakzhou, the man must be executed for serious crimes. Zhou Ji folded his fingers and began to use his time manipulation technique. After that, the man got into an intermediate universe filled with gold watches. He put his palm forward and began to look for intervals in which Zhang Yixin committed crimes. Thus, the man reached the moment when the villain made sacrifices to infants. Zhou Ji turned back and announced that the practicing paths of demonic cultivation should be punished, so he instructed to take Zhang Yixin into a celestial dungeon. The ruler had given his moral condition with the words of choosing the day of destruction of the body and soul, and added that all lords of cities and cities who were engaged will be removed from their positions. Zhang Li finally wanted to find out from the offender where he took the method of sacrificing babies, and also how he learned that the power of faith is able to relieve a person from the curse of children's souls. The cousin envied his brother for reaching Mahayana's period because he had a regular talent, did not possess heavenly spiritual roots, and the infinite Tao body. Zhang Yixin replied that without this technique, his life would be over for the period of laying. The emperor ordered him not to pretend to be a fool because when he first began cultivation, the heavenly spiritual root was blurred and the body of boundless Tao was sealed. This mutilated body was not able to accept 5 elements, and the man recalled that Zhang Yixin was constantly mocking him. Li was cultivated to Mahayana's period and could not even count with how many deadly crises he faced on his way. The emperor was not one of those who intimidate the weak, but his cousin is a complete opposite, because cutting children is inhumane. Zhang Yixin closed his eyes and squeezed that it was a matter of man's hands in black, which appeared 380 years ago. When the day of his death was approaching, the man extended his hand and told about the ritual of the sacrifice of the blood of babies. It helped the cousin to move to the level of the golden nucleus, and when he returned to life, he tried in every possible way to stay alive, and the sacrifice helped him in this. He was worried that the image of babies would reveal his practice of the demonic path, but the man in black told him that the power of faith was able to protect against it. Zhang Yixin finished the story that after that, the stranger disappeared and he did not see him anymore. Li realized that if the Mahayana had not achieved, he may have to rely on the power of faith, and as soon as the incident would be widely publicized, it would greatly influence him. The hero had suspected that it was not just the spread of demonic doctrine, but a conspiracy against him. But 380 years ago, he was only a candidate for emperors, so perhaps a man in black put his hand to all applicants. Li just wanted to complete a system task, but instead revealed such an unpleasant sight. Upon completion of the sentence, 2 emperors, Zhang Li and Zhou Ji, were walking through the city. The main character recalled that a man in black appeared 380 years ago. The head of the Dakzhou dynasty emphasized that, unfortunately, such distant events could not trace. Li began to praise Zhou Ji for being skilled in everything, properly managed the people, being an emperor, and rightly adheres to the laws. The man added that he was appreciating friendship with him. But after these words, he reproached that, as a cultivator, the guy is not particularly burning with the desire to raise his level and simply waste his talent because now he can only trace 80 years. Zhou Ji boldly recommended the emperor himself to try it, to which the man replied that, unfortunately, understanding of time depends directly on the perception. He tried but could not learn. Then he added that diplocary was owned by the founding Emperor Shun, which is a symbol most suitable for the practice of time. Zhou Ji recalled that the ancient legend was lying that the first ruler was originally a fish in the river Plena. He received some vague benefit, jumped out of there and, becoming a man, came to Juzhou and founded Dazhou. That is why the descendants of the dynasty became naturally closer to the path of time. Because of this, the emperor believed that his friend should be cultivated. But Zhou Ji simply ignored his advice, saying that if there were no other things, he had to go. The events are transferred to the full darkness of the place where the rays of the sun fell only on the female figure lying on the couch. A lot of amazing jewelry hung on the girl's body, and a symbol of leaves was distinguished on the chest. Old men standing nearby admired the beauty of the young man. They didn't even believe that something so beautiful could exist in the world. They wanted to pick her up. After completing the task, the emperor called the system to summarize today. She greeted the carrier with a victory over Zhang Yixin after careful training and avid duels. Then, a man appeared before the man with the question of whether he wanted to receive the reward. The hero agreed, at the time thinking that even after diligent training and avid duels. At the same time, the body of the emperor instantly pierced a familiar force and he began to look at its power. Li was concerned that it is even smaller than it produces in one breathing. Then the hero remembered that it was intended for the quenching period, so he acknowledged that then this force was coming. But if he could use this from the beginning, he would have reached a perfect state during the establishment. Similar pieces are used by the main students of large sects. It looked like a bullying, because who needed the power of unknown origin? So Li just threw her away. The man looked at other proposed artifacts. There were the technique of hardening of the body, architure of the dragon and tiger, the spiritual sword of the middle class, etc. He took several awards and absorbed them into his ring for storing things. The hero received a vain thing from the boring rise system and a vain gift for a newcomer. After that, another notification of publishing a new task came from functionality. After the hero joined the Huaoyun sect, the grandson of the Grand Elder Yunbo believed that the spiritual root of the 5 elements of Li would not reach even an average level and interfered in every possible way. The system wanted the emperor to use the advantage in force and won the man, and added that he could give up the task. The awards for performing were a chance for insight, a fragment of a mysterious map and spiritual weapons of higher quality of any form. These artifacts had quite interesting names, so the man decided that he would take the task. After consent, the repel system opened a new feature called Store for the carrier. It was interested in Zhang Li and he ordered to open it. After that, screens with lists of different things appeared in front of him. The hero didn't really like the list of proposed artifacts. After all, I thought that it would be possible to get a mobile, computer, nuclear bomb, a satellite from a former life, or objects from the kingdom of immortal. Most of all, the man wanted to check whether his body would hold against something like a nuclear rocket. Zhang Li turned to the system and asked if there were items from other worlds in the store. To which she replied that to unlock this kind of artifacts, the emperor should go to other worlds. It was another would function, because if he could go to another place, then the system would not be needed at all. After that, the hero asked her to help arrange things from more to less with the necessary points. In the first 4 positions on the list were the collective techniques of the whole of the Emperor of the People, the heavenly seal of Yin and Yang of the sect of the Tao, the puppet of the period of disaster, and the autograph of the immortal. Zhang Li didn't understand what things Lao Bai do here, because they are the treasures of the local sect. He believed that things in the store had to appear from nowhere, and suggested that they may be stolen from others. The emperor understood that he was not before, because first the task was to complete, so he asked the system to close the function. Then he slept that you can use a remote communication mascot to contact his sect. Li went here after overcoming the sorrow, so maybe they are still looking for him. He used the technique and ordered it to be connected from Zhang Kunhu from the emperor's temple. After that, a man immediately began to shout at him, who was trying to contact again because he had an immediate business. Emperor Zhang Li, with a calm expression, asked what happened. The hero knew that Zhang Kunhu was a ruthless person capable of overcoming sorrow only because of his body. He can pour a pair of slaps in Juzhou. Li assumed that the man quarreled with a woman or heavenly, where he began the invasion, but he denied his guess. The hero thought that Zhang Kunhu invited the abbot from the Buddhist temple to visit stewed vermicelli with pork, but it was not true. The brother asked the man to stop guessing because he won only garbage in the lottery, so here you can't even talk about his luck. Then Zhang Kunhu finally explained the matter. In their place, the beauty was running a fight. The emperor did not understand that such urgent was that the men were fighting through a girl. The guy reported that the head of the Menzian dynasty a few years ago took a concubine. He hid her and did not even allow strangers to look at her. As a result, he simply scored the reign and spent all his time with beauty. The hero knew that some rulers had weakness towards beautiful women. Because of this, they postponed public affairs, which was quite common. Such in no way concerns the temple of the Emperor of People. If a lazy emperor appears, then it is immediately disassembled. This is widespread, so it is easier to combine all 9 regions. Zhang Kunhu announced that it is rumored the ruler of Mengjiang does not even touch his concubine, but just looks at her. It was also known that between the Emperor Meng and the Wei from the Dai dynasty Dawei, a wonderful relationship. After Wei left the location, he immediately went to the Golden House to find out what happened to a friend, and then happened. The hero remembered that the friendly emperor also preferred beautiful women, so he suggested that he went to Meng Zhang for his concubine, but he refused. These guests were quite correct. Wei offered spiritual stones, equipment, and earth in exchange, but his friend disagreed. And then they started a fight and destroyed half of the imperial court. Li knew well that men who have a high position were simply not retreating. The hero thought that it might be better to be cleverly a good private teacher for Zhang Kunhu. However, he understood that it was a major incident for two dynasties because the emperor was able to lead 1 million soldiers or even more. In the 9 regions, a huge number of hardening cultivators, the laying of the basics and the golden core, but little practitioners of Yananin are not the same as the army of mortals in his former life. According to Lai calculations, the practice of the 6th level can stop the ball with 1 finger, and the period of the gold nucleus is not inferior to the explosive power of the tomahawk rocket. The scale of the battle, most likely, spread to other dynasties and sects, which can lead to a global war in all 9 regions. Zhang Li told his brother that he would go there immediately and try to reconcile the emperors, and he can do it only by force. For the hero, the fight against the million army is worthless, but it is difficult for him to assume how much energy will be needed. He also noticed that his friend was injured and asked how it happened. The man replied that when he found out that the two were going to fight, he immediately went to reconcile. Zhang Kunhu stressed that in the end, it is the duty of the commander of the Temple of the Emperor of People to maintain a peaceful situation in 9 regions. But no one could think that one look on beauty would be able to steal his heart and soul. For the commander, she was as beautiful as the fairy, the most beautiful girl he had ever seen. Looking at her, Zhang Kunhu immediately wanted to pick her up and began to repeat that no one could take her away. At that time, the man almost lost control of his body because he wanted to steal the concubine. He could not come up with a different way out, so he had to beat himself strongly to get rid of the influence of pain. Li realized that everything is not so simple here, because those two are the same field of berries and only a little weaker than the Emperor Zhou, and that they decided to beat through a concubine, spitting on the fate of countries, it is not surprising. But Zhang Kunhu is another matter. He became the commander of the Temple of the Emperor of People, and regardless of cultivation, his nature is developing in the best way. The fact that some concubine is so good that even an unhappy brother fell in love with the inability to control himself, there was a clear problem. Zhang Kunhu reported that the emperors said that they would arrange a deadly fight at the first meeting, so Li was going to go now and ordered the commander not to take his eyes. When he arrived in a place after a day, he saw that the 3 had a fight again. Zhang Kunhu sharply shouted to the emperors that the beauty was worth the strongest. The men ordered this ignorance to fail because he is now in the territory of the Menzian dynasty. Li was angry because he ordered his brother to be able to look after 2 emperors, and he again found himself enchanted. The blow of one hand, he quickly wore the bundle of 2 emperors of the dynasties and Zhang Kunhu. 3 rivals from blows immediately flew into the ground, where cracks were formed around their figures. Zhang Kunhu rose first and noticed that he came to consciousness again and now not obsessed with a beauty. Then, with his smile, he reproached Zhang Li that he could be a little softer, because he almost broke all the bones. The emperor was glad that the man could still retain common sense. He went down to the earth and reproached the nobles that, knowing that they could not fight, they had climbed and staged a duel. Li emphasized that if they dare to make a fight in the country, then one slap will send them directly to hell. The rulers of the dynasties were excited by such a statement, so they bowed to the emperor in obedience. The hero said Meng Jiang to finally lead him to look at this strange woman. The head of a slight movement of his hand suggested a man to go forward. After that, they entered the house where a beauty, illuminated with a ray, lay on top of the stone stairs. Meng Jiang announced that he brought her to the Golden House 3 years ago, and all this time she slept and very rarely wake up. Even a loud noise outside is not able to wake it up. The emperor saw in front of him a blonde girl enveloped in jewelry which glowed brightly even in the dark. The man was shocked because he had already seen beauty earlier in the portrait. But the picture was written in ink on ordinary paper and was included in the list of prohibited goods precisely through the woman depicting it, because she had to die. The emperor could not understand whether the same deity or they just looked like. Meng Zhang began to be angry because Li was looking at him for a long time and ordered to stop, emphasizing that the beauty was only him. The emperor grabbed the man for the inside so that it was difficult for him to breathe, repeating that therefore need to be calmed. The ruler of the dynasty asked Zhang Li in surprise whether he felt anything when looking at the beauty. Everything they received was only that this girl is really very pretty. Men were extremely surprised that he had no desire to assign her to admire. The subjects acknowledged that the Emperor Zhang Li has the mind that beyond the possibilities of ordinary people. Heroes with a serious expression were asked by men where they found this girl. Meng Zhang said that when he hunted in the west and alone got into the thickets of the forest, he unexpectedly found a beauty written there that slept on an old tree. He came to the realization that his body was mortal and not worth touching on this girl. Therefore, the man used the void to transfer it to the imperial palace, and later built a golden house as a place where the blonde woman could sleep peacefully. From what was seen by the emperor, people concluded that this woman is strongly dependent. He told the heads of the dynasty that he would go to the clean land of the junction to confirm something. Li hoped that in the meantime, the emperors would retain their conscience and would not be stuck in beauty, and ordered Zhang Kunhu to look at the door and not let anyone go to return. The hero used the ring and decided to place a large protective formation here just in case. The big barrier unfolded around the golden house and shone it with blue rays. Zhang Kunhu asked his brother when he learned how to build formations, because he thought he had completely refused to cultivate hundreds of skills. Zhang Li once said that he had problems with talent in the formation of formations, so he refused to study, though he had a high level of combat capacity. It was unclear where he had this skill, so the man immediately confessed that he had stolen her in Laobai. And then he immediately added that, thanks to the jade token, which was given to him by the head of the Tao sect. In the western area of 9 regions, there are 2 large sects. The first is the Buddhist School of Mercy, the second is the Pure Land of the Junk, where only girls are accepted. The Buddhist school has gained popularity through the good deeds that it has created around the world, as well as cultivating the payback of future life, which a large number of people introduced. The Pure Land of the Junk leads a secret life. The civilian population has heard only the name, but no one saw their members. It is for this reason that the sect has overgrown with a large number of legends, one of which says that the founder was so attractive that the Buddha himself was amazed by her beauty. The next day, Jiang Li went to the clean lands of the Henshin to the reservoir, in the middle of which there was a rock of a strange shape. The man came closer and apologized to the visit to these places. He passed through the portal and moved to Pure Lands, where it was met by the Taoist nun Qing Yu and the Jingxin holidays. The second girl congratulated the Emperor of People and emphasized that he was still elegant and free. Li said greeted with Jingxin, with which they had not seen themselves for a long time, and was satisfied and glowing with a smile. Qing Yu reproached the man that though he knew everything, but still dared to come here and stressed that she was not going to accept it. Jingxin didn't understand such a tone by the craftsman because the Emperor of People made them a visit and they could not just expel it so much. Li praised the girl for even many years later she was still a wise woman, unlike some foolish Taoist nun. Qing Yu annoyed that the authority and cultivation of the student is already much higher than in her mentor. The man, as if reading her thoughts, said it aloud and asked the interlocutor, "Why not take the place of the woman?" The girl replied that she considers the title of the Taoist nun not the most attractive title for herself. The mentor was the head of the doctrine of the Pure Land of the Junk, with which he had one incident in the past. Qing Yu in the past fell in love with the son of Buddha from Mount Suma, but so moved unclean thoughts, so the emperor killed her husband. Since then, the nun hates him. Li stressed that if Jingxin continues to rely on him, he would not be able to get married successfully. The girl reminded that when the immortal tree of the Pure Land of Huns was dying, everything was done thanks to the Emperor Jiang, who saved him. When the student remembered it, the craftsman began to angry. Even then, she announced the award in the Middle Kingdom. Anyone who saves an immortal tree could choose any treasure from their treasury. Qing Yu executed the contract, but the arrogant emperor just took the key to the hiding place, so their students had to descend from the mountain to make money. Li heard that, as a result, many wonderful love stories were created and reproached that she had to thank for it. He also recalled that he had turned the nun the key back, but was dissatisfied because it happened only 10 years later. Jing Xin reproached the craftsman that if she did not laugh at Zhang Li, he would not take the key to the treasury, but she did not even go to thank for salvation. And since the conversation was about the hiding place, the hero said that he once saw a picture in it, existing only on the pure land of the junk. Then he added that the appearance in the portrait struck him and left a strong impression. Jing Xin said that a person in that picture is their founder, a homeless man, Hong Chen. When the ladder in the sky for the becoming immortal was not broken, she came into the world of mortal. The inhabitant was beautiful, as if an angel. Every strand of her hair had the force of attraction. Even men and women who came after a period of disaster could not resist her charm. At the height, the appearance of Hong Chen brought to the delight of the higher luminaries of the kingdom of the immortal that they did not shy about the real crazy. The despair fled to 9 regions and no longer returned to the kingdom. But wherever it went, there were conflicts everywhere, so it was necessary to use force to stop them. When the woman heard about the Tao sect, she went to look at her personally. And when she saw her head, he said that this girl was a manifestation of the beauty of the doctrine. After that, the beauty went to the west and founded the pure land of the junction, proclaiming herself in the homeless Hong Chen. Li seriously reported that he suspected that he had met with their founder and, moreover, she was risen. The man also remembered that, as far as everyone knows, their founder of the sect has long died. Qing Yu knew that reincarnation was operating in 9 regions, but never heard of resurrection before. Jing Xin said that you should not treat their founder in terms of common sense. Li said that he was a stranger here. He was a little awkward to admire the remains of their inadvertent, so the man asked for permission to visit the tomb to assure that the body of the beauty was unharmed. Jing Xin replied to the emperor that from the moment he saved the immortal tree and became a philanthropist of their pure land, so it could not be outsider. The woman brought Li to the tomb and reported that in order to prevent the abduction of an immortal body, the founder left a seal outside the crystals. Only the inhabitant could remove it, so most likely after the resurrection, she just went alone. The emperor reported that right now their founder in the golden house of the Menjiang dynasty. The women were wondering in what condition their mentor is now, whether she fully restored memory or acted instinctively. The nun instructed Jing Xin to go with the emperor to evaluate the situation in the golden house. When the girl arrived in place, she reported that the founder of Hong Chen was really in front of them. Zhang Kunhu watched them from behind the wall. He did not understand that Jing Xin's holidays were doing here with his brother, and why he didn't look at his beauty at all. The girl reported that she was feeling a blood connection with the founder, that is, she was a descendant of the dinner. Li replied Jing Xin that it is probably because of this it was possible to resist the magic Hong Chen. The girl said that there are many beauties overflowing on the pure land of Huns, since there are 2 sources of students. The first is when the craftsman descended from the mountains and traveled while typing women under her wing. The second is that on the pure land of the junk, an immortal peach tree sprouted, and the consumption of its fruits could make a woman pregnant. The inhabitant also took an immortal peach, and that's how Jing Xin was essentially a pleasant. In those days, it was known that newborns were considered students of pure land. Holidays, looking at the founder, said that its beauty was incomparable to them, ordinary mortals. She also knew that compared to the unique innocent, he was the most beautiful beauty, which occurs every 5,000 years. The emperor went out to the heads of the dynasty into the yard and reported that the inhabitant would be strongly addicted, and finding with them would only cause chaos, with the founder of the pure land of the junk. Then he added that this woman manages the mind and feelings and that she was going to turn her back into the sect and asked Manhwa that he thinks about it. The head angrily replied that he was against it, because the innovator has been sleeping near for 3 years and she was accustomed to this place, so he was not going to allow her to take it from here. Li was familiar with local rules. When it is not possible to find a compromise, everything is solved by the hardness of the fist. The strong respects and the weak eats the earth. He told the heads that they would allow them to hold several techniques. They replied that it would be too big. The nobles were indifferent that the emperor of the people whom everyone was respected, they did not think that his status was higher. It was disrespect for their dynasties. But a few seconds, Dacho's head in a trembling voice begged to call a doctor. The course of the events is transferred to the town of Shire, located near the clean lands of the junk. Dusinya was cultivated near the reservoir and has not observed any progress for a long time. The girl had the feeling that her body was a blowing bucket into which spiritual energy penetrates and immediately goes out. She turned to Jingshin, which was occupied by sect affairs, and asked if she remembered her sister for the period of the Golden Core, who wanted to again address the cultivation of Tao. One of the students emphasized that Dusinye is the only one who talks to the holy every day. None of them even dare to approach her. Although the mentor was not strict, she seemed to be an inaccessible person, but the girl did not think. Du recalled her first time when she turned to her sister with cultivation problems. Then Jingshin asked the girl gently what causes misunderstanding in this process. Then the mentor very well helped to deal with the problem of cultivation. Dusinye for a long time remembered her kindness. Finally, Jingshin said that if in the future there is a problem with understanding, let the girl just find her. After the emperor defeated the heads of 2 dynasties, they returned to the territory of the Pure Lands of the Junk. Immediately after the arrival of Jingshin, she was restrained by the nun from there. And after the appearance of misunderstanding on her face, they forcefully pushed a woman from the tomb. Qingyu was dissatisfied with this attitude because it was also a descendant of the founder of Hongchen. Then she remembered that the head of the past generation was able to return the woman to the mountain only at 28 years and could not resist the charms of the founder. But the nun was still angry with misunderstanding why everything is fine with the emperor because Qingyu is the leader of the doctrine and he is just a stranger. Jiang Li and Jingxin took the fidgeter to the tomb, waiting for some reaction from her body. She did not wait long. After arrival, the woman began to open her eyes. After awakening, Hong Sen immediately rose from the place and jumped into the air, where she was delayed for a few seconds. Jingxin congratulated the founder and introduced itself as a descendant of the 36th generation. Lai called the Emperor of the People 72nd generation and also greeted the inhabitant. Hong Chen could not understand who she was, if her descendant before her, and what was the emperor at all. Jingxin asked the woman how well and in general she remembers the latest events that happened to her. The innovative replied that she only remembered how she woke up from these crystals. It seemed to her that there was something that connected her beyond. When the woman got rid of the put, she went down from the mountain and went straight to the east. On the way, she began to clot more and more in a dream. So she found a large tree on which she decided to lie down. When Hong Chen woke up, she found herself in the golden house next to her husband and began to ask him. He only nibbling in response. It seemed boring, so she fell asleep again. The recent events described were repeated several times until they appeared in front of the dweller. Jiang Li asked the inherent whether she remembered what happened in the kingdom of the immortal, or what happened after descending into the lower world. The blonde could mention nothing of this, which indicated that after the resurrection, she had failures in memory. In other words, it could mean that the body did not retain memories of past events. The emperor opened the map and tried to recreate the place where the girl woke up, where she walked past 2 trees along the river. Hong Chen told strangers that she wanted to sleep very much, so they decided not to interfere with the founder's rest. When the comrades were leaving, Jingxin asked if the emperor noticed a problem. Li remembered that after taking the key to their treasury, they could not even get the money to buy cereals, which was why they had to go down the mountain and find a way to get spiritual stones. To preserve their honor, the man decided to turn the key. Jingxin was angry with these words. The emperor knew that some people had moved here from the main Zhong dynasty and asked if women really allowed them to settle here, which the interlocutor nodded. Zhang Li knew perfectly well that all inhabitants of 9 regions have the ability to cultivate. The mortal ones were referred to as traveling cultivators who, by the end of their lives, could only reach the early stage of improvement. Jingxin said that those people formed villages, and in addition to Shanghai and Saya, which the founder indicated, there are 6 more settlements. In those places, residents grow spiritual cereals and pass the sect of Pure Lands every year. Li considered one point unclear, because the inhabitant passed these 2 villages on foot, and given its appearance, why people could not recognize them. The most important thing was that the sect did not receive any news about it, although 3 years have passed since the disappearance, and no one knew about it. Jingxin also began to consider it strange, because the tomb of the founder is in Zakalost, So it is reasonable that after descending from the mountain, no one saw it. However, Hongchen passed through living villages, and the fact that no one saw it there is suspicion. The girl replied that there could be no such thing, because in every village, the sisters are supervised for the period of the golden nucleus. In addition, the quality of the spiritual cereals supplied by them was incredible, so it was unclear how they could slide something. Li thought that it was obvious that when they noticed that the problem had not solved, they stopped taking it as such. After this answer, he jumped into the air and went to the nearest villages to explore the situation. The woman was angry and started trampling with her feet a senseless book that says that good guys like stupid girls. Jing Xin rushed to the emperor, remembering that the master certified that this guide was especially useful, even called it popular among 9 regions. The throne book was called 100 Ways to Force a Man to Take the Initiative. A lustful teacher. Qing Yu was upset with this attitude to her creation because she tried to write it so much. Comrades arrived in the nearest village, where at first glance everything seemed ordinary. Many people walk around and sellers are fussing. However, after a moment, they realized why the founder, Hong Chen, whimpering the hearts of the immortals passing here, did not raise one wave of blood. Jing Xin has used her holy vision and found that there was no vital energy in this city. And workers, traders, or ordinary pedestrians, they were all dead from the inside. It was now clear that the village of Shanghai is a place of the dead because the dead could not have feelings for beauty. The waiter of the local eatery was surprised by unfamiliar guests and suggested that they were immortal from the pure land of the junk. The emperor posted a spiritual stone on the table and told the boy that he would like to ask him something. The waiter apologized and emphasized that they are not done so because their guests are noble people, so they are not paid from them. Jing Xin noticed that the guy's movements are free and nothing was hampered. The naked eye does not distinguish it from a living person. The girl decided to test his essence with the help of divine consciousness. In his body, there was a worm of GU. One controlled actions and the other, thoughts. It was a tactical technique of managing the dead of the GU clan. Zhang Li asked Polivoy whether she had been going here a few years ago. The guy replied that 3 years ago, a beautiful woman was noticed here who came out of the painting. Everyone rushed to look at her at once, but the inhabitant did not even pay attention to them. There were people who wanted to follow her, but they were stopped by Yuan. Jing Xin explained Li that the immortal Yuan Lin from the GU clan is responsible for this village. The emperor asked what the caretaker looked like when she saw the beauty. She did not seem obsessed or did not want to approach and take her away. The waiter was surprised by such a question. He reported that the immortal Yuan Lin looked like usual and only a little admired by the beauty of the inadvertent. Jing Xin knew that the girl was from the Gu clan and therefore could not be the descendant of the founder of Hongchen, so it was unclear how she was not exposed to magic. Finally, the emperor asked Polov, or he knew that he had long been dead. But the guy just looked at him in surprise. He did not understand what he was in mind. Jiang Li replied that he just joked and told the waiter to do his business. Jing Xin was thinking about why Yuan Lin was not influenced by the founder, because now only on the period of the golden kernel. But in terms of the degree of fusion of the worms of the GU, these people do not know that they are already dead, and in any way it is impossible for the one who has reached only such a period. The emperor replied that the technique of corpse control for a long time was highly class, and such features can only be found at the stage of God. However, the problem was that not only members of the GU clan could use it. For many years he has been on Jianggu and saw many unusual things. The Gu clan went down, so he was forced to hide, which was why there was almost no information about them. The man asked the interlocutor how much time had passed since she was here for the last time, because everything became different if you reached the period of becoming God. The girl replied that according to the elders of the sect, spiritual cereals are just a little thing that should not be worried about. That is why they send only students who are hopeless in cultivation. These villages were located mainly girls on the period of the golden nucleus. There were no problems with managing Yuanin and the one that is responsible for 8 settlements. But now a great trouble has arisen, so Jing Xin has admitted that it was partially her fault. The girl said in a serious tone that the first thing wants to meet Yuan Lin. The emperor carefully checked all the divine consciousness and found that there was no woman in the village of Shanghai However, he noticed that there is one girl in this period, which is probably one of the members of the sect. Jing Xin was glad to hear that, because she knew that there was a Dusinye's sister which was managing the village. Meanwhile, the girl herself unsuccessfully tried to cultivate on the corner of the house near the pond. Her spiritual power did not grow at all, so Dusinye began to think that it may not be for her. It is difficult for a person to be in a sect without talent, so she thought about taking some work beyond. So talented sisters will not have to spend their time on arriving here. Suddenly, Dusinye heard a familiar voice who assured her that the girl was no cuddle. She was incredibly glad to see a sister with whom she last crossed several years ago. The girl reported that she was faced again with cultivation problems and wanted to turn to the mentor for advice. Suddenly, Jingxin hugged a student firmly and said that she should apologize for making a mistake. Dusinye thought that the sister was so serious to convey to her knowledge of cultivation. The emperor watched the girls who have not seen themselves for several years. They were right like yin and yang. The place of the dead was not only the village of Shanghai, but also the monastery of cultivation Dusinye, Xie. The girl asked her sister not to cry and apologized for having lost her control. Dusinye looked at her husband and said the mentor that she never said who it was. Jingxin pointed to the noble hand and reported that it was the current emperor of people, Jiang Li. The student whispered to the woman in her ear, which is the same man whom the holiday spoke constantly. Dusinye heard that the emperor of people surpassed everyone in power, fearless and almighty, incomparable with immortal. It is the strongest in 9 regions. The girl asked if it was true. Jiang Li replied that he had previously considered himself invincible, but now noticed that he could not ascend to immortality. The man is not subject to turning back life and death, so he is just a person who will also have his end. Then he recalled that they never met Yuan Lin in the village of Shanghai and asked the girl where she was. But she replied that she has often left a place lately and even disappeared for months. Dusinye recalled that a woman was returning during the autumn harvest. It seemed to her that nothing else happened. The comrades decided to report that they would stay in the village for a while to look at the situation in the Saija. Dusinye was glad that he could finally listen again, as the sister brings her knowledge of cultivation. She then turned to the emperor of people and asked if he could also ask him for advice on the subject. The girl said that her cultivation stopped on the period of the golden nucleus and no longer rose. She was unclear what it was related to because she had made so much effort. The emperor stroked Dusinye on his head and assured that it is normal. It is not necessary to rush in this process. He said that he would gradually work out because he also encountered such a problem earlier. The girl cheered after these words and began to believe that everything would work out. Jiang Li could not understand how splicing corpses could help increase cultivation. When the night came, the man rose to one of the rocks and called Zhang Kunhu, the commander of the temple of the Emperor of People. When his brother appeared, Jiang Li instructed him to go to Nanjiang and find members of the Jiyu clan. He also ordered the man to investigate cases where the dead could move freely due to the Jiyu worm and find out what level of cultivation it is necessary. Finally, he added that the dead did not even realize that he was no longer alive and asked his brother to do so as soon as possible. Jingxin came up and asked the emperor with the help of divine consciousness to look at the other 6 villages, because her technique can only reach Shanghai and Sai. Zhang Li fulfilled her request and announced that everything is normal. People are alive there. The holidays were very glad to hear it. Jingxin was interested to learn how far the divine consciousness of the emperor. The man replied that he did not know himself because there are only 8 settlements. He again used his equipment and reported that Yuan Lin finally returned to his monastery. The girl was dissatisfied with the fact that she drank little and wanted more. She needed to get more spiritual stones to buy wines. Suddenly, her whole body has pierced a terrible feeling, and Yuan Lin was in a completely different place. The girl was recovering and angry asked who dared to move her to the pure land of the junk. Jingxin approached her and asked in aggressive tone why she did not return for months and what she did with people. Looking at Yuan Lin, the emperor immediately guessed why the Hongchen's inadvertent had no influence on her. The girl was scared when she saw Jingxin and asked why she came. Yuan Lin began to justify the fact that there is nothing here, only a bunch of mortals engaged in agriculture, so she went to the Menzian dynasty to have fun. Then she added that she returned every fall of the collection and collects spiritual cereals according to the plan without any delay. Jingxin replied that precisely because the harvest always came on time, no one was going to check a check. She realized that the problem would be better with spiritual cereals, not with these two settlements. The woman was angry with how Shanghai and Sieha have no living person. Yuan Lin was scared because they noticed it and began to assure that she didn't want to do it. She explained that in order to have fun in the Menzian dynasty, spiritual stones were needed, so she purchased cereals for him. A crowd of people began to suspect that the girl gave them too little rewards, so they quit work and went. Then Yuan Lin was in a hurry, so she killed several people who had problems. As a result, someone shouted that she would bring her sect to her, and then the woman had opacities. She disobedient them all. Fearing that they learn about it, Yuan Lin used the core and controlled human Danian so that they continued to grow spiritual cereals. Jing Xin was incredibly angry that this monster killed people for a similar cause. She asked about the village of Suish, because Du Xinye was Yuan Lin's older sister, so how could she do so with her? The criminal replied that she was afraid that someone would notice it, so she killed her sister and all the inhabitants of that place. Jing Xin noticed that the girl herself was already dead and maliciously announced her of her own stupidity and what she didn't even notice. Yuan Lin couldn't believe what her sister had just said and asked if she was just scaring her. The emperor realized that the girl did not know that she was already dead, so she should not expect her to call her killer. The man was able to understand what happened. First, Yuan Lin killed all the inhabitants of two settlements and used worms to control people so that they would steadily continue to conduct the farm. At its level, cultivation could only be placed in Dantian to control the actions of the corpses. She looked at the storage vessel and did not notice anything strange about this spiritual artifact. Then someone killed Yuan Lin, used the worm to control it, and then placed those in the sea of knowledge to get control of people's thoughts. Thus, the inhabitants of both settlements were no different from the usual people, and no problems with the period of Yuanin did not arise. The emperor could not understand the purpose of the person standing behind all this. Jing Xin, with a shiny smile on her face, asked Zhang Li, could he go out because she wanted to stay with Yuan Lin for a short time? From this smile, a man ran over the skin. He replied that he would wait for her for a mile from here. Even at the place where Li went, there was a terrible girl's screams and prayers for mercy. Jing Xin mercilessly killed a criminal who was already dead, seeking to take revenge for all her actions. Now the woman had to be ordering here, so she moved the body of the dead in the storage ring. After a while, the successor of the innovative returned to the emperor and apologized for expectations. The man shocked her with his observation that something strange is happening from Du Xinye. Jing Xin, watching sister's behavior, realized that she did not even suspect that they were here. After the inhabitants of the settlement gathered spiritual cereals, then they were ground into rice and then evenly distributed for storage before sending to clean lands. All this was responsible for a special person, and Du Xinye was not supposed to do it, only to oversee. It was unclear why she was engaged in the delivery of spiritual rice to a vat. Jing Xin looked at the storage vessel and did not notice anything strange in these crushed cereals. Zhang Li advised a woman not to use divine consciousness to view this rice. He argued that her heart could not withstand. But after these words, Jing Xin only wanted to look more what was wrong. She sent her ability to vat, but he opposed the divine consciousness. Then, the woman decided to simply increase the intensity of her skill to test it. But seeing that he was in that vessel, the holy threw in the trembling and it began to be very nailed. The vat was filled with eggs of the worms of Jiyu, disguised as spiritual rice for sale. Jing Xin began to shake her sister with misunderstanding what she was doing. The girl asked if there was no rule in the sect that the cereals needed to pour into that pile. The woman asked who told her that, and when it was on the pure land of the junk. The emperor took one egg of the worm to the tip of the finger and reached out Du Xinye with a question if she knew what it was. The girl was convinced that it was spiritual rice, but she was not particularly surprised when she saw that she had something else. Zhang Li asked Xinye to go outside and wait a little because he had to talk to her older sister. The man put the worms to cook and said the interlocutor that someone intervened in the girl's mind. This man forced Du Xinye to think that in that large container, ordinary spiritual rice. Jing Xin was much scared when the emperor stretched her saucer with cooked invertebrates. These worms remained alive even after cooking. Their stability was much higher than it should be. Zhang Li suspected that someone added parasites to spiritual rice so that the members of the pure land of the junk were eaten, but it was unclear for what purpose. After a while, Zhang Kunhu was known to himself. He reported that he found a clan of Gu who confirmed that they practiced corpse worms that make the dead to move as usual. This requires cultivation of at least a period of merger, however. According to records, the strongest participants are only in the period of Yuanin. In order to study this technique, it was necessary to read an ancient book in the ancestral hall. It was strictly guarded and access to it was forbidden. But Zhang Kunhu tried to steal her, and it was very easy to do so, as if no one noticed. Of course, he returned it. The man added that the members of the clan said that they were forbidden to practice the technique of Jiyu control of consciousness, and it has long been lost. They do not go out of the mountain and lead a secret life. Zhang Kunhu hoped that the emperor's temple would publish news about it so that everyone was alert. Hearing about the lost equipment, Li asked about her. The brother added that the members of the Jiyu clan said that such a type of parasites was very dangerous. It is worth swallowing his body. And even if in the future he reaches the period of becoming God, the owner of the worm will be able to control it and will not even suspect it. The emperor took a plate with parasite eggs and asked if they were not the same to control consciousness. The brother replied that it was. The cocoon weaving looks like spiritual rice, and they themselves are miniature like hair tips, silent in water and active on fire. Jing Xin was scared to think of how many years of worms were added to spiritual rice, how many sisters ate it, and whether one of his uncles of running had tasted him. It was most more than a mate that in how many people on the pure land of the junk are already a worm of the control of consciousness. Qing Yu was worried that the student had not yet returned because she was an emperor of people, and it was hardly something that could go wrong. Suddenly, she heard behind herself steps and a female voice saying that they would not return anymore. It was Huan Ai, which had long been expelled from the pure land of the junk. The nun asked what she returned. The younger sister was offensively because of such a rude reception. Qing Yu could not understand whether the girl came because she was engulfed by malice on their sect for expulsion. She also suggested that Xuan Ai could return to seize power because she had not yet resigned as she had been allowed to become a teaching head. It was true because both women were in the merger period, which means that they were equal in force, and the other could not understand why they were not chosen. Qing Yu replied that the pure land of the junk did not suit the intrigue, and the sister was constantly absorbed by the authorities only for the sake of her own pleasure. She mocked her students, so it was clear that she was not particularly popular. Xuan Ai laughed and said that it was no longer concerned about human hearts. The woman reported that after leaving the sect, she wandered the world and accidentally discovered the land on which the Gu clan lives. Xuan Ai was in the merger period, so she did not resist any resistance and moved freely there. She could at will study the technique of the clan and take any worm of Gu which she only wished. The head of the doctrine asked the girl whether she secretly studied the forbidden techniques and now returned to take revenge. Xuan Ai mockingly replied that she started 50 years ago from a place where they would not immediately notice. The events are transferred to the village of Sayahe. The emperor asked his brother whether the Jiyu clan told how to remove control of consciousness. Zhang Kunhu replied that either the Lord of Nazi should voluntarily remove him or need to kill a person who is influenced. That is why the control of consciousness does not make sense for practitioners to overcome sorrow, because thunder destroys worms. The emperor thanked his brother for his help and explanation and suspended a conversation session. Zhang Li told the holy that the incident has not yet reached the final stage because the control of the Jiyu was not yet activated, and assured that the students of the woman were only waiting for them to save them. The emperor of people promised that as long as he was near, there would always be a chance for salvation, even in a very difficult situation. Jing Xin also realized that it should take a long time before the one who stands behind it would take full control. And the fact that the equipment is not yet activated indicates that the owner is waiting for the proper moment. The woman was certain that they still had a chance to correct mistakes, so Jiang Li trusted. Qing Yu could not believe in what heard. In spiritual traits, there are worms of the control of consciousness. When Xuan Ai returned from the lands of the clan, she thought for a long time to use stolen knowledge. Fortunately, Yuan Lin was able to inspire her, so the girl's death also had some value. The nun was in full shock. 50 years she did not notice how residents of 2 settlements died and did not find any problems with spiritual rice. Xuan AI asked the sister whether they did not want to find out how many people on the pure land of the junction have eaten parasites over these years. Then the woman shouted that behind her back, you can look at the result of her efforts. On the street near the entrance to the house, there was a huge number of crazy girls who obeyed the will of the criminal. Qing Yu hated herself for being so kind. She had to kill her sister even then. Now she thought it was not too late to get rid of the trait. Xuan AI warned that all students were under the control of its GU and stressed that he could kill everyone with only one thought. She threatened, if her sister dares to touch her, she will start to disappear the girls one by one. So the nun was forced to stop. The traitor thought that Qing Yu could not believe her and publicly pulled out one student's heart. Other poor in a frightened voice began to pray the head of the sect of Pure Lands to save them. Qing Yu could not understand whether Xuan Ai had lost control of herself for a moment, whether she was forcing the students to scream so much. The nun asked the traitor what she wanted and assured that she would give everything if she released the girls. Earlier, Xuan Ai wanted to get the post of teaching head, but now she wanted to ask for something else. When the comrades arrived in the sect, they could not understand why the protective formation stopped. After all, it was the same barrier of the pure land of Huns, which was never broken before. This territory has existed for 1,000 years and is known for its mystery and incomparable beauty. A huge number of people looked at the beauties of the sect, and they repeatedly caused a real disaster, but they were stopped by a protective formation. It was clear that the master would not stop Jingxin, so maybe someone else got control of her core. Xuan Ai turned to the emperor of the people Jiang and her niece and said they were late. Jingxin did not expect that all these murders could be her aunt character. Holidays asked the woman what he did it, assuming that for the sake of the head of teaching. Xuan Ai replied that she was no longer interested in this position. The niece asked what she wanted. At first, the woman planned to distribute the GU for 50 years and then usurp the throne, but she recently heard that the founder was risen. Xuan Ai was not a straight descendant of the divine, so she could not meet her personally, but she was curious with curiosity to draw her portrait and brought her. The appearance of the founder completely fascinated her. The woman acknowledged that in this world there are really people whose appeal lures everyone regardless of gender. Now she wanted to get the founder of the pure land of Huns, so that all her strength and beauty should only be Xuan Ai. The woman said that if the emperor did not find the resurrection of Hongchen, the pure land of the junk would have been peacefully existed for 50 years. The sister clenched the head of the doctrine of teaching and shouted that if she wanted to blame someone, he should do it with Zhang Li. Jingxin angered this attitude towards the mentor, so she used the technique of a stray emerald lotus. However, there was no scratch left on a large protective formation after this attack. The girl thought that if one emerald lotus is powerless, then perhaps a dozen could have some effect. However, the efforts to break through the protection were completely in vain. Its forces were not enough for confrontation. The emperor saw that Jingxin did not work, so he asked to let him try. Xuan Ai emphasized that this formation was the founder of the pure land of the junction from the kingdom of immortal, and even the attack will not harm it. Jingxin knew that the Emperor Zhang Li was not distinguished by knowledge in the field of formations, so she was worried about it. The criminal appealed to her husband and said she respected his contribution to 9 regions and did not want to offend him, so she asked just to retreat, threatening that the myth of his invincibility would be destroyed. Zhang Li said Qing Yu's abbot that would save her life today, asked to stop keeping an image and suggested to start everything with a blank sheet. After the woman agreed, he immediately rushed to the protective formation and struck it with his fist. After this attack, the barrier of the pure land of the junk flew into small pieces. Xuan Ai was incredibly shocked by what she had just seen, because she did not expect someone to break through the formation. When the students began to come out, she warned that all the worms of the GU, which control consciousness. The criminal threatened that she just thinks, and they would all end with them. And no matter how quickly the rivals did not work, they will still not be able to ahead of her thoughts. The emperor of the people said that he really could not guarantee that he would be faster than thought. Xuan Ai believed that rivals were obliged to obey it because they are afraid of their students' lives. The criminal said she was asking a little, only to allow her to go with the founder and to swear heaven that they will not stop her. However, Zhang Li pulled out a spiritual sword and said that he did not need to be faster than thought. Xuan Ai realized that the things were bad, and decided to take control of some students as soon as possible to force them to commit suicide and intimidate a man. But she did not have time to finish his plan because the emperor was ahead of her with a wave of her sword. A man cut in half of all worms in half who sat in the bodies of students. When the girls were escaped, they could not understand what they were doing here and why they hold swords in their hands. Xuan Ai could not understand how the emperor cut the GU into two parts because he did not even release his. Zhang Li said he has boring skills of owning a sword, so knows only one technique. This movement is called the heart of the sword. Rising in thoughts, descends into the sea of consciousness, and between the rise and the fall, forms these blades in the body. Initially, this technique was used to cut muscles, veins, and bones, but as it turned out, it is great for cutting the worms and the rescue of people. Xuan Ai was scared of the emperor's strict view and tried to assure that it could still be useful. But the traitor did not have time to register how her husband took her head with one stroke of the blade. Finally, he said that to kill Xuan Ai, no sword techniques were needed. At dawn, the girls viciously looked at the dead body of the traitors and said that the problem was finally solved. The protagonist apologized to Jingxin and the abbot for not interfering with his business. At first, he wanted the heir to solve this question herself, but it was not possible for her, so Li had to finish everything in person. The girl replied that if it were not for the emperor of the Zhongli people, the Pure Land would not survive this catastrophe. She added in a high way she had nothing to offer instead and can only pay off her body. Li thought that if Jingxin could still joke so much, then everything is fine. The man said that because of the conspiracy, the whole sect almost turned into a puppet, so he recommended them to be more careful and promised to leave the incident in secret. The head of the doctrine bowed and replied that all past images were erased, and from today Li, a philanthropist who saved the Pure Land of the junk. Qing Yu realized that if it were not for a man, their sect would be a smile, and the woman herself would be nailed to the pillar of the shame of Pure Land. The girls promised that today's act of the emperor people will be remembered forever in their monastery. After that, Zhang Li went to the village of Siehai, which all this time was supervised by Du Xinye. From her husband, she learned that all in this place were infected with the worms of the Jiyu clan. Now Xinye understood why her improvement was on the spot. It turned out that the girl had long been dead. When Xuan Ai was killed, the worms themselves began to die one by one, so the village of Sha and Siyu is now sown with corpses. Since Du Xinye was a cultivator of the level of the golden nucleus, it will be able to last for a while, but it won't last long. The girl asked if Jingxin's sister did not come, because she wanted to see her again. After these words, the heir to the inadvertent immediately jumped out of the corner and shouted that she was here. Jingxin hugged Du Xinye, begging her to open her eyes and look at her sister. Unfortunately, the woman could not fulfill the last request of the student and give her the advice on cultivation. The course of events is transferred to the luxurious court of the Tao sect, which was directly in heaven. At the entrance of the emperor met a servant who asked to wait for the head to arrive. When the sect's abbot arrived, he smiled in Zhongli, which brought him to this yard. The man replied that he wanted to ask him a mascot of a remote connection for the Pure Land of Huns. The green-eyed Jizai told the emperor people that he would give him this thing without any problems. Zhang Li did not understand such a change in the behavior of the chapter, because earlier, when he asked for such mascots, he always had a painful facial expression. The guy had too smart smile, so the emperor feared that he thought something wrong. Jizi replied that one gifted young man appeared in the Tao sect, and as his head, he is very happy about this news. Li thought that this person was truly significant talent, and he was interested in who he was, so he asked the man to introduce them. He believed that if he was able to observe the growth of this gifted young man, as the keeper of 9 regions would be able to consider that he has fulfilled his duty. Gigi replied that it would not load him at all, and also added that the emperor knew this guy so well. Then he strictly reminded Zhang Li that he was carrying a spiritual board of the sect of Tao and travels as a member, so he would have to express his respect when he sees the abbot. This explained the moment when the emperor first introduced this name, showing the spiritual artifact of the Tao sect. On the same day, a man gave a mascot of a remote connection to the Pure Land of Huns and asked women to let them know if they see any movement on the part of the immortal dinner. Qing Yu realized that their founder had an incredible force. If she decides to do something, only Zhang Li could cope with her. The emperor emphasized that they did not spread news about Hong Chen in the outside world because he was afraid of how much trouble could occur through her charm. After that, Li reported that he could not linger anymore because he should go to Dachau. After Jing Xin's annoying questions, he added that he has a certain unresolved case. When the emperor came to the place, he met and bowed a guy named Yun Bo. With a dissatisfied expression, Li reported that he is a person who came to exchange experience with him. The man clenched his fist and sent a surprised Yun Bo to flight with one right hand. The renovation system greeted the carrier on the fact that he had overcome his abuser, and then the awards for this task were the possibility of enlightenment, spiritual weapons of the highest class of any kind of choice, and a fragment of a mysterious card. The system also awarded the man the achievement. The quenching of these wins the foundation because he overcame Yun Bo, being at the 9th level. The emperor didn't understand why there was no button to rewind here to jump to the task of his level, since this time the calculations were incorrect. The Swiss Army knife chose a Swiss knife as a type of spiritual weapon of Li, but the system did not find a match with that name and asked to be re-selected. The man named AK-47 and the Tiger Tank, but such items were absent in the list of available awards. When the emperor asked a kitchen knife, the system found a coincidence: the spiritual weapons of the top class of Bloody Bath. This knife, being washed with a huge amount of blood, draws vitality from it and can be increased to the magical tool of the middle class. Seeing that the way to establish a connection with spiritual weapons was the demand to drip on it with his blood, Zhang Li asked the system if she was certain that he would suit him. The information window stated that there was no reason to doubt the professionalism of this security. After this answer, the man bit the tip of the finger, and a few drops of blood fell on the blade of the teeth. An increase to the spiritual weapons of the highest class began, then to the perfect, then to the magical low, and finally to the average. But as a result, a strong explosion occurred at the place where the knife was located, although Zhang Li warned that this way would not fit him. The man turned to the system and after such professionalism asked if he could now call her a senseless piece of shit. However, the answer was ignored and instead asked to accept a fragment of a mysterious card. It was a map of the secret kingdom of Canyan. The following tasks were required to get the rest of the parts. However, the emperor had already had a full map, pointed out the location of this place, and replied that he did not need other fragments. The system congratulated the user on the fact that he accidentally found the location of the secret kingdom of Canyan and reported that the reward for the following tasks was changed. Zhang Li seemed to be a deep disappointment in the last message. The next message stated that the secret kingdom is too dangerous to the user at its stage of cultivation. The system advised to refrain from research until the stage of the soul is reached. In any case, the emperor was not interesting to be a secret kingdom, so he asked to give the next task. The system asked to wait patiently, but the man was surprised that he could not go to the next mission. Suddenly, the head of the Tao sect appeared behind his back and reported that he was so happy last time that he forgot to say something. Zhang Li was angry that this boy enjoys his status as a remote communication developer and can activate someone else's independently. The man turned to the head of the sect and with a sour expression asked what he wanted. Gigi was dissatisfied that the student who spreads the teachings of the Tao in the outside world is so turning to his abbot. However, aggression on the face of the emperor forced the boy to temporarily forget about his images. He reported that the heavenly seal of yin-yang would soon be overcome. According to his observations, less than a year. He also added that when this happens, the Tao sect will hold a conference on the assessment of immortal weapons. Gigi asked for a service to come and support him as the present emperor of people, to which he agreed. The man was glad that they agreed so quickly, and finally said that when the time came, he would send him an invitation and organize a VIP place. The Yin-Yang's heavenly seal is a big event, so Li suggested that the sect would be preparing for this whole year. The founder of the sect, known as the Ancestor of the Tao, had the same title as a creature from the immortal world, for which he was punished by heaven. However, it remained unharmed. People have suggested that it was a reincarnation of a true ancestor or has a non-disaster body such as the body of 3 demons. The heavenly seal of Yin-Yang was improved by the same ancestor of Tao. After completing, it became an immortal weapon with boundless power and is now considered the most valuable thing in 9 regions. After the ascension, the founder left it as a treasure to stabilize the fate of the sect. The magic of the heavenly seal of yin-yang is that it can be improved independently, and each time its level increases by 1. The last time this happened 3,000 years ago, so the emperor did not want to miss the chance to witness such a prominent event. However, it was too early to do this. Besides, the system was still silent, so Zhang Li decided to stay alone with him and take cultivation. He needed to consolidate the results achieved during the last overcoming of the heavenly catastrophe. The clear sun illuminated the height, and from the moment of seclusion of the Emperor of People has passed 2 months. The man received a new task. The secret kingdom of Suanmyo will soon open. Only those whose bone age are less than 30, 5 years can get there, and the level of cultivation is at the stage of laying. The students from other sects saw that the man was only in the middle stage of the foundation, did not take him seriously, and only laughed. Zhang Li needed to win the championship in this secret kingdom and prove their power. The hero was dissatisfied as soon as he plunged into contemplation, as he was immediately prevented by the damned system. Then it was reported that this task could be abandoned. The reward for performing was the discovery of the functions of spatial teleportation and reading points of the result. Hearing this, the Emperor of People realized that he could not give up this task. The course of events is transferred to Dazhou, where the Tower of the Mysteries of Nature, according to the tests that took place once every 10 years, celebrated its championship. The head was satisfied. When it was about gathering information, no one could surpass him. He liked to watch the envious views of the heads of other branches. Suddenly, a messenger broke into their room and reported that the Emperor Zhang Li had arrived in them. The chairman did not understand the reasons for the sudden visit because their tower did not violate the laws, did not follow the demonic path, and set a fair price for their services. The students did not understand why their abbot was so panicked and feared that their organization may have somehow offended the Emperor of People. Once a map of 9 regions was full of mistakes, and the people who used it were wandering and not where they needed. Therefore, 100 years after climbing the throne, Li decided to redraw it. By that time, the Tower of the Mysteries of Nature already had a similar map that was sold to cultivators at parts at a high price. Since the Emperor's plans could stop these sales, the head tried to prevent him, but Zhang Li was already in the Mahayana stage at the time and was not afraid of resistance. He gathered all the rulers and created a new map of 9 regions, which was several times more detailed than the one sold by the tower. But he gave it almost for the cost. The Tower of the Mysteries of Nature could only watch. She lost most of her profits, and because of this incident, the head feared that the Emperor was still holding an image on him. The students considered it a great feat of Zhang Li and suggested that he received a lot of integrity for it. However, they could not mention that these services would be mentioned in some documents. This was not only about it. Even the previous emperors of People who protected peace in 9 regions, they left no trace of their charity anywhere. One story is known, according to which, after the disappearance of the latter, their lands have lost their connection with the immortal world, because integrity no longer reached it. The members of the tower met a man with bows and a sign with the inscription, "We congratulate the Emperor of the People who came on a check." Zhang Li didn't understand why everything was looking as if he really came to check their work. There was a motto in the Secrets of Nature. Any client is immortal to them. They will go around the whole world, but they will collect the information that customers need. The chairman noted that some information is confidential, so they would not sell it in any way. Hearing such a loud representation, the emperor corrected "sell" to "collect" and praised the man, putting his hand on his shoulder. The head wondered if Zhang Li was satisfied with their work, to which the hero replied that he did not complain. The emperor reported that he came to them to get information about the secret kingdom of Suanmiao. The chairman ordered the subjects to bring him a crystal ball and promised that he would personally get all the necessary summaries for the ruler. So he wanted to show how well the Tower of the Mysteries of Nature works with information. As a result, they found out even the date of birth and the horoscope of the founder of the secret kingdom of Suanmiao, though they said that they did not sell confidential reports. Zhang Li had no big deal, so he could not strongly control this organization, so the reward gave them a spiritual stone for information. The man insisted that they took it and then left the territory of the tower. The head asked the subject near him whether he was able to draw well. He confirmed that so, and a few days after the visit of the emperor in the middle of the city hung a poster which depicts Zhang Li near the head of the Tower of the Mysteries of Nature. 800 years ago, a cultivator known as a Hermit of Oblivion, who was in a fusion stage, died of exhaustion while overcoming the heavenly catastrophe. But before that, she deliberately left on the southern border of Dachou, the secret kingdom of Xuanmiao, to leave the chance to younger generations, laying the basis for the creation of good karma. It opened every 10 years and had different trials, such as the resistance of money and beauty, a witness or combat capacity, and so on. There were 2 stages in total, and depending on the results, appropriate awards were issued. And today, the emperor came to participate in the competitions. He could enter the direction and get the first place in her husband, but to compete with the young man if possible, it was simply ridiculous. The man decided to disguise under the cultivator at the late stage of laying the basics and to test with everyone. Zhang Li greeted a guy who thought that the stranger sect had sent him one because they did the same with him. It was Qin Luan, the eldest and last student of the head of the Monastery of Pacification of the Wind. His mentor traveled around the world for 10 years, so it was necessary to cultivate alone. Other participants recognized the boy. Someone heard that during his check at the age of 8, it turned out that he had a single spiritual root of a thunderous type. Everyone believed that without the support of the great Qin Luan sect, he would simply waste his talent. But no one could think that due to his ingenuity, he would surpass many well-known students. Hearing these conversations, the emperor remembered that spiritual roots were also divided into good and bad. The best are 2 types. Celestial and earthly, the next quality is single, and the worst, 5 elements. Although changed single spiritual roots are not as cool as the first, they stand on top among single ones. Zhang Li replied to the guy that is the oldest in his sect, so he has no people to escort. The man is the head of the temple of the emperor, so he was actually the oldest there. Qin Luan, with sympathy, thought that all the elders died in the stranger in the sect, and he remained at all alone. He assured the man that he could not worry, because they are unfortunately with him, and promised that he would look after him when he would find himself in a secret kingdom. Qin Luan asked the emperor as his name. The hero wanted to be called Zhang Li, but remembered the complacent grimace of the head of the Dao sect and changed his mind. The man replied uncertainly that his families were Kun and the name was Li, then said he was Kun Li. Qin Luan reported that in the past competitions, there was one guy who specifically oppressed his strength and broke into the stage of the Golden Core when he was in the Secret Kingdom, making it first place. He threatened that if he meets such an individual, he would give him a copy, and when he starts to break himself, he would show him what honest competitions are. The ranks of the participants were joined by the people of the sect of impartiality. They were talked about as those who have no feelings and do not trust anyone, just a sword in their hands. Qin Luan announced that the boys in front of them were Qi Sha and his older brother, and remembered that the first is a rather difficult enemy. He exchanged experience with him, and out of 10 matches, only 8 managed. Zhang Li asked if this guy was somehow connected with the arrow and the world of immortal. The man did not understand why he had not confronted this name so far. Qin Luan replied that no. His brother himself called so only because he decided it was a cool name. The next participants were joined by Sun Ying and her mentor from the Cherry sect. The cultivator reported that this girl was also a difficult rival. From 10 matches, he won only 6. Sun Ying was glad that they met again and promised that she didn't lose him this time. Qin Luan advised the friend to be careful with this girl. She's not sure of her victory, so she tries to distract him with the Taosa mind and beauty. It is very cunning. The emperor suggested that perhaps the guy really likes, even such a blind man like him can say that he is interested in him. Just look at her angry mentor. Qin Luan replied that it was impossible because he was already asking whether that Sun Ying was sympathetic, and she asked who could like such a fool. From these words, Zhang Li concluded that the girl looks like a cultivator. Suddenly, the emperor's attention was attracted by a man nearby who was in the late stage of the stage of laying. He felt that the soul of a stranger was now at the stage of transformation of the spirit. It meant that before him, a displaced person to another body. Sun Ying accused Qin Luan of pretending to see, but the guy denied it, because otherwise if he introduced her brother Kun and replied that he just didn't want to deal with her. The emperor turned to the couple and pointed his finger on the man nearby, asking if they knew who it was. Sun Ying replied that it was Li Latun, a true student of the Stone Dragon sect. She heard that his talent was medium before, but after falling from the rock, he had suddenly changed. In just half a year, the man advanced from the initial stage of laying the bases to the late. Qin Luan competed with him and easily won, but it seemed to him that he was hiding his true strength. The emperor thanked for the answer and added that friends could continue his disputes. After that, all the participants heard the announcement that the secret kingdom of Xuanmiao opened. It has been announced that the number of people who can enter the secret kingdom of Xuanmiao is limited to 800 places. The students of the sects were asked to enter and organized, and now the moment when the portal has already entered the 799 people. The emperor entered the 8th. The organizer asked him to wait, warning that he would throw him out of the secret kingdom. The man has already overcome the barely noticeable force of resistance, as if a 4-year-old child was trying to repel an elephant. The remaining outside did not understand why there was no reaction to the just entered person after exceeding the limit. These spiritual here is condensed in spiritual water, and it becomes a river. One of its sip is equal to 3 months of cultivation of the practitioner at the stage of laying the foundations. Cranes were circling in this city and calm citric sounded. This landscape was as if from the world of immortal. The hero caught one bird, burned a fire, sat down by the river and began to fry it. Suddenly, a girl ran out of the forest. She began to ask for a noble traveler to save her. When the lady came closer, she was extremely surprised, seeing that Zhongli would fry the crane and burn the citra. 2 attackers with knives were approaching closer. They believed that the girl would not be able to escape from them. Chun Er begged the noble traveler to save her from bandits and promised to devote herself to him and give all the money and household property. This girl was 28. It was only in the first stage of quenching. In 9 regions, such talent is considered a disability of the first group. The bandits caught up with Chun Er and, seeing her with her husband, suggested that she fled to her lover. Men with mocking expressions of their faces said that today this couple would die. However, they did not have time to agree as Zhang Li rejected the bandits away to continue to eat their meat. Chun Er sincerely thanked the benefactor for salvation and said she could not pay him anything except her body. She suggested that her husband visit her village because she wanted to thank this feat. The density of the spiritual there was several times greater than in 9 regions. There were also wild fruits, natural treasures, which are very useful for trainees at the stage of the golden nucleus and above. Zhang Li suggested that the cultivators at the stage of laying the basics would want to stay right here. He was disappointed that Chun Er, in the presence of so many treasures, was still stuck at the stage of hardening. There were only women around, so when the hero was here, he had a feeling that he had fallen on the clean land of the junk. Chun Er has been bitterly reported that their country is now divided, everywhere in war and destruction. All men were forcibly taken into the army, leaving many widowed women and young girls. She noticed that the level of cultivation of Zhang Li is higher than in the practitioners of the Great Master and assured the man that if he took part in the war, she would be able to unite the land and become the ruler. The man wondered how much the high-class stage was voiced than the girl. Chun Er replied that at 8 or 9 levels. Zhang Li was disappointed that the stage of the Great Master is equivalent only to the last levels of the hardening stage. This kingdom was incredibly weak. But now the hero understood that he was actually being tested here, because for cultivators who are in the stage of laying the basics in 9 regions, this place is like paradise. Many beauties will rush to cultivators into the arms, and a huge number of natural treasures will help to easily achieve the stage of the birth of the soul and become the ruler. This is what people do not even dream about. Although Zhang Li was not particularly interested in this, he still said that he would capture this world. He still had to act as the secret kingdom needs. After 7 days, the ambassadors came to the palace of the new emperor on the bow. They gave him millions of spiritual stones, wonderful wines, and natural wealth. The empress gave a list of women who voluntarily joined the harem of the emperor. There were 3,000 of them. The woman took it and said she would hand over to His Majesty. The people of the secret kingdom, with all the honors, greeted their new ruler on the throne. After a while, the hero announced Chun'er that he cannot stay here anymore, so he leaves that place. The girl knew that the philanthropist did not come from this world, but asked if he did not like anything that could be forced to stay, which the man answered. He had a harem of 3,000 beauties, so he would have been tempted. But Zhang Li met women, and more beautiful. Chun'er could not believe it, but when she heard that the hero had seen the immortal Hong Chen, she froze for a moment with surprise. The girl was tearfully asked if the emperor was not interested in all possible heavenly and earthly riches in the treasury of the palace, for example, the brilliant divine fruit that adds 30 years of cultivation. Zhang Li instead showed the pill of the creator of 9 turnover. If the ladder was not broken, with the help of this thing alone, could immediately rise into the world of immortal. When the girl saw this artifact, she wanted to pick him up and return to 9 regions with her husband. However, she realized that he should calm down and continue her insistence. Chun'er reminded the benefactor that he would be the true ruler of all the lands. This is a great achievement that emperors dreamed of all time. The hero replied that he was already the emperor of the people of this generation, respected by all in the 9 regions, and this is clearly the title of the ruler of the secret kingdom. Zhang Li was forced to find out that everything he said before was just an excuse. The real reason was that there is no point in staying in the illusory world. The hero asked the elder Meng Chun if she did not consider herself. The woman began to change her accounting and said she thought she was able to create illusions well and that she could hide it from Taos. The Lounge of Oblivion by the name of Meng Chun has admitted that she overestimated herself too much. The man knew who was in front of him, thanks to the information obtained from the Tower of the Mysteries of Nature. 800 years ago, this woman was considered the most beautiful in the world. Lower Oblivion is a cultivator who specialized in Tao illusions. It was rumored that if you achieve high skill along the way, you can turn the vision and reality upside down. And the fact that someone thought for reality can easily be false. It was a really scary thing. As soon as the emperor stepped on the threshold of the secret kingdom, he immediately realized that this place was an illusion. Absolutely everything was false there. After that, the lounge dispelled the vision and they returned to the ground from the secret kingdom. Meng Chun bowed and apologized for his rudeness because she did not know that the emperor of the people of the present generation came here. The man learned that the cultivator really died while overcoming the heavenly catastrophe, and the one who was in front of him is just a trace that she left behind before going to the battle. Zhang Li replied that he was only his fault that he broke into the secret kingdom sharply and created a problem for older Meng Chun. The hero added that if a woman wants to say, then let him say and not keep it in herself. Meng Chun met the emperor of people of her time. He was considered a great person of that generation, but was not like an immortal exile into the earthly world that Zhang Li seemed. So she suggested that in 9 regions there was a ladder of the ascension again, but in fact the man was just lucky enough to break into the Mahayana stage. The woman thought this level was just a myth, and it turns out that there are really people who can achieve it. Zhang Li was wondering whether this time the older Meng Chun was created by an illusion, a test for the stability of younger to money, beauty and power. It was true. The woman believed that if they stand at least before one of these 3 things, she would enroll in their passage and they would be able to go to the second stage. It was easy to guess because these things were given in the secret kingdom too easy. And when they got into the illusion, people closed their eyes to differences and threw out deeper, being unable to get out. Meng Chun understood that with his level of cultivation at the Sakajana stage, a man could manipulate her secret kingdom at his request, but he did not. Since the hero showed such respect for her, the woman was not going to ask what the goals he pursued. New acquaintances paid their attention to Qin Luan, who seemed to break through the illusion. The lonely noted that only a month in the middle of his virtual world had passed, and the boy had such a good determination. Meng Chun had to go back to her secret kingdom, so she told the emperor that they would have the opportunity to talk again when all the trials would end. Finally, she added her assumption that the next stage may be suitable for a man. The events are transferred to one of the illusory worlds of participants, namely Qin Luan. The girl thanked her husband for being so kind and did not simply watch the suffering of people, but saved it and ended the war, establishing a new country. She added that the emperor who cares about the ordinary people is a true blessing for the whole world. The guy said shyly that he just did what he should. He really considered the delusional words that he cares for people, because in fact, he is only greedy to her body. The girl reported to His Majesty that the ambassadors of the neighboring kingdoms had sent him a lot of treasures as a gift and asked if he wanted to receive them. Kin Luan replied that he did not need it at all because he believes only in his cultivation. Such is his prejudice. After these words, the reality in the boy's eyes suddenly changed, and he woke up on the ground. Seeing a familiar man in front of him, Kin Luan realized that all this was an illusion, a test for resistance to beauty, money, and power. The guy acknowledged that the test in the secret kingdom is really difficult. After all, if he did not give up heavenly and earthly treasures, he could have been killed in the virtual world with his head. Kin Luan only spent a month in the illusion and was sure that none of its generation with such a stage of cultivation would have to be ahead. The guy acknowledged that Kun Brother hid his abilities well. He was very ashamed of praising his power and for proudly stating that he would look after a man in a secret kingdom. In order not to bring any suspicion, the Emperor of People replied that he was just lucky. Then the man addressed the eldest Ming with the question of whether he could look at the younger performance inside the illusion, so he wanted to shorten his time. In response, a mirror of water appeared in front of him, which was greatly surprised by Kin Luan. The guy thought it was a reward for the first passage. In reflection, they saw the virtual world of Li Tun. They learned that the man reached his goal quickly in just 2 months. Li Tun was incredibly pleasant praise. Cultivation also reached the top of the stage of laying. Soon, he could regain the transformation of the spirit that was relocated to this body. Virgo prepared a list of 3,000 women in his harem for the Lord and asked to look at it. Li Tun replied that he did not need women, and this is not because he considered them ugly. The reason was that the man is being improved by the technique that is built on virginity. Li Tun strongly replied that he would not sleep with concubines and would not accept any objections. The man suddenly became aware and realized that everything that had just happened was the illusion. Its cultivation was still at the late stage of the stage of laying. Li Tun saw 2 more participants who also woke up from the illusion. This meant that he was only a third. The man expected that he would take the first place in this secret kingdom and that receiving awards would help him return to the stage of transformation of the spirit that was before the migration. But he knew that anyone who entered Suan Miao signed a contract for refusing to show up in the event of his death and that he would not happen here. Dajo would not be held accountable. Li Tun saw 2 guys whose state of mind was a little better than he had. But the combat capabilities were still at the level of practitioners at the stage of laying the basics. The cultivator was certain that it could easily get rid of them, so he used power and rushed forward. Kin Luan noticed an unexpected crowd and became ahead trying to protect his brother Kun. The guy felt the incredible pressure from the opponent's aura. She was even more powerful than Sun Ying or Qi Shuo. The Emperor of People decided to intervene in this fight. He was with 1 foot disarmed with an arrogant attacker. From this attack, the man rejected a few meters ago, leaving a stack of dust. Zhang mentally asked Li Tun how he was able to achieve the stage of transformation of the spirit with such a mental state, and suggested that therefore Just was very lucky. It was the technique of transmitting a sound that only a man who was shocked by the stranger so easily revealed his main secret. This meant that he was definitely a big expert. Kin Luan was fascinated by this skill and asked his brother Kun from which the sect and how he cultivated to become so strong. The hero asked the boy whether he wanted to join his monastery, noting that it is quite possible. Given the talent and state of mind Kin Luan, he could well become a candidate for the post of the Emperor of People and compete for the title of the next ruler. Now in a water mirror, they could watch the illusory world Sun Ying. The young guy held the heroine by the hand, saying that he owed everything he had only to her. Sun Ying rescued him from bandits, gave all the treasures, which made him from the stage of quenching to the foundation. The girl even divided the throne with him after uniting the world. Kin Luan was incredibly surprised, because the guy who was rescued by a girlfriend is him. The hero said the girl that she had nothing to pay, but had one desire that he could fulfill. Sun Ying sincerely said she didn't need any throne, she just wants to live with him in the mountain forest. After these words, the illusory world of the girl suddenly began to crack into pieces. Kin Luan still could not be tired of what it means, and shocked to look at its vision. He did not understand why this devil, as he suggested, wanted to confuse his heart of Tao, saved the boy and did not take away all the natural treasures and gave up the throne. The emperor noticed that with the cultivator is not all right. Qin Luan said he needed to be a little being alone. Many participants took more than 4 years to get out of the illusion, and someone stayed there at all until he died and died. Qi Sha went to the test 1 year. It was quite fast comparing with other rivals. When each participant came out of the illusion, the organizer announced that the first 100 people who got out could go to the next stage. Everyone else failed out of this list and was obliged to leave the secret kingdom. Meng Chun has been happy to announce that she would now be rating the best participants in the first stage. The hero did not understand why notes of abuse were felt in the voice of the location. It all cleared when the woman announced that in the first place, the Emperor of the People Zhang Li, on the second, Qin Luan on the third, Li Litun on the fourth, Sun Ying, and on the fifth, Li Fugui, which calls itself Qi Sha. Other participants were incredibly shocked when they heard who headed this list and tried to find a man. Qin Luan could not understand what the Emperor of People meant, saying he could join his sect. The guy wanted to ask personally about it, but suddenly began to feel a lot of drowsiness. All other participants also fell asleep, so it could mean that it was a second stage. Zhang Li got a bed from the ring and settled on it. Although he did not want to sleep, it was a demand, so the man lay down and covered his face with a hat. A moment, all the participants were escaped in the same place, which indicated that their dreams were connected. Qi Sha looked around and immediately realized where they were and said that this place of Tao dreams. Qin Luan heard his words and ordered everyone to stop the noise and listen to Li Fugui. The guy became angry, hearing his name, and looked around to see what brazen shouted it. But when he saw that it was Qin Luan, he decided that he could, and began his story. He somehow heard from the elder, which is a rare way of cultivation called Tao dreams. It can be improved directly in a dream, and when collided with the enemy, you can make him fall asleep and tighten him in his own delusions, and then defeat it there. It was very similar to what is happening now. Meng Chun has announced that there are 100 practitioners inside the dream world, and while they are here, they can get any power they only imagine. After the announcement of this paragraph, the Emperor of People was now sure that she was abused. Then the organizer added that the last one who remains in this world will be the winner of the second stage. One of the participants wanted to be allowed to imagine how he could turn the mountains with his bare hands. After expressing his desire, the man was really able to make a reality. Qin Luan realized that in this world of dreams, they can become what they want, and that power will depend only on the limited imagination. The first participants took advantage of this opportunity and broke through at the stage of the golden core and the birth of the soul. Someone was not concerned about the advancement of the following levels of cultivation, and they imagined the true body of majestic animals. The Kunpens guy turned the rivers and the sea up and could flood everyone. One girl turned into a true dragon that managed in 4 seas and was an expert at the stage of overcoming sorrow. But she was immediately overcome by a participant against whom all these animals, only dust on the palm of such a controller of heavenly catastrophes like him. The emperor watched the younger fought among themselves and thought that his fighting style, a sword, a boring, tedious compared to them. Zhang Li was thinking that it may be worth a variety of adding sword suanguan or something like a show. Many participants imagined themselves at different stages of cultivation and staged fights with each other, humiliating opponents. Li Fugui emphasized that heaven has created everything existing for people, and they did nothing for them, so they should be punished for it. The guy was incredibly liked by the abyss of Qi Sha arrow. She had a huge force similar to true immortal weapons. The emperor concluded that the boy's imagination was able to help him reach only the early stage of the fusion stage. He knew about experts only from stories and had no idea how to break to a new level. Zhang Li was afraid that he would not be able to use the true power of the cutting sky of Qi Sha arrow, because in the end, imagination was also based on his own knowledge. Qin Luan asked Li Fugui why he behaves as an idiot and whether he really considers himself a Taos. The guy himself was only at the stage of the golden nucleus. He is a realist and does not allow his imagination to walk, but more thinks that it is better for him, given only this, already has the advantage over all participants. Li Fugui saw that Qin Luan was in a lower stage than it was believed, so he was not afraid at all. The hero used the imaginary power, shouting that the Qin Luan is cut. Sun Ying saw that her friend was preparing an attack and instantly put a shield ahead. She used an emerald lotus as a weapon, so it became interesting to the emperor whether she was studying with Saint Jingxin or just has such a strong imagination. Li Fugui threatened that it would not be restrained and today will cut the tongue Qin Luan. He added that he would not stop even if the emperor of the people of Zhangli people stood. Sun Ying tried to hold back the attack, but it was so powerful that it was more difficult. So in a few seconds the couple dropped back and the stones were left at the site of the impact. However, they were able to land without damage. They were helped by the emperor of people, Zhang Li. The couple thanked the man for the salvation. Sun Ying looked at the ruler closely and was still surprised from the recent news. Zhang Li said in gratitude that no one could die here, so he did not save anyone. He added that, however, the moment between life and death is accompanied not only by fear, but also by a great opportunity, and suggested that it would be useful for young people to feel it once. Qin Luan immediately wanted to embody the suggested, but the emperor replied that he was just joking and better not to do so thoughtlessly. Then the man approached Li Fugui, turned to him and said that he was too timid. The guy bowed to the emperor of people and replied that he just wanted to experience his potential. Zhang Li has repeatedly regretted that he has revealed himself as older Meng Chun because now everyone knows about it. Then he asked the boy with a call if he wanted to face him in the battle. Li Fugui was satisfied that would be very glad if the emperor of people enlightens him. He thought he was now at the fusion stage and possessed the scattering sky with the arrow. Especially recently, Qin Luan and Sun Ying have easily overcome, so he was sure that no one was opponent. Zhang Li suggested that if he had been in a similar situation, being at the stage of laying the foundations, he would not have dreamed of challenging the emperor. But even more so that he was challenged, not treated with excessive respect, he liked more. Li Fugui created a seal behind his back and began to imagine a huge sword similar to the arrow. The Qin Luan was amazed by the sharpness of the object that appeared, which was the power of the legendary These, which cut part of the world of the immortal. Li Fugui sent a generated sword directly to the emperor with the desire to overcome her husband. However, the hero had only 2 fingers to stop the newly released weapon. Li Fugui hoped that he would be able to injure the emperor of people and thought he would have at least some pressure on him, but he was so easily clamped by his immortal sword. Zhang Li said that the usual cultivator at the fusion stage could not block this blow. But this is not even enough to injure the practice of overcoming sorrow, not to mention the harm of the emperor. Other participants saw the ruler and began to whisper that the child had challenged him. Li Tun thought that it is also worth trying to compete with the emperor because now he believed that he was incredibly strong in this world of dreams. Li Fugui asked other participants if they did not want to get a couple of people from the emperor and stressed that such an opportunity falls once in their lives. Zhang Li was pleased to hear and turned to a couple, saying that they could also join others and fight it. Sun Ying did not want this because the ruler himself was in front of her. In addition, she believed that he was simply irony because she was angry because of her unusual respect. Qin Luan told the girl that the fool if he thinks because the emperor of people was summoned to instruct them in goodwill and refused. Li Liton began to use his oppressive force, going to attack the emperor. Zhang Li decided that he would also seriously fight against participants and return his usual strength. Li Liton did not have time to attack, as he found himself on the other riverbank due to the powerful blow of the emperor. He stuck on the rock, leaving many cracks and clouds of dust on it. The participants knew that Li Tun was among the top 10 strongest players, but he was defeated by the emperor of people in one stroke, so it seemed that 2 people could not overcome it. Li Fugui shouted that they should not be concerned about moral principles when they deal with the ruler, so it is worth breaking on him together. The 4 Site True Dragon was called in response to this phrase, saying that he was not afraid of anyone. Li Fugui told the participants to watch him use 7 immortal swords and changes this world. Another guy also joined the fight. He was sure that no one would be able to withstand the power of clouds of immortal catastrophes. They united and were going to break the emperor's end with their compatible attacks. Zhang Li was incredibly joyful, looking at the energetic group of boys in front of him. The man put a shield and acknowledged that he was envied by young people because they still have dreams, unlike him, that he cannot even imagine a creature stronger than himself. The emperor knew about bilateral foil, about weapons based on mathematical laws, but these were only concepts, not principles. However, he was not a brilliant physicist. Jiang Li thought he could imagine himself immortal, but never been in that world and could not understand how these were arranged, so he could not transform his spiritual energy. However, the hero was certain that if he had faced the true immortal, he would be able to overcome it. His storage ring had a weapon, a halberd, which a man had not used for a long time because he didn't face the enemies against which it could be used. As for the laws, the emperor managed to overcome the heavenly catastrophes with the same ease as to take a bath, and the foundation of time and space is too heavy for his imagination. Because of this, it was sad. The participants were incredibly annoyed by the fact that while they are trying to break the opponent's protection, he calmly reflects on different things. The player approached the man in accounting for the true dragon and was going to show his skills. Jiang Li struck the opponent with one blow, saying that people also have a body improvement technique. The Long Luo Han, who has conquered the true dragon, lives on Mount Sumi, and the emperor's temple is Zhang Kunhu, which is able to overcome the heavenly catastrophe with one physical body alone. So Jiang Li asked a hand, friendly participant, for which he imposed on himself the body of another species. After this question, the player realized that all this time he chased after highly efficient beastie blood, trying to turn into a creature similar to a person dragon. These creatures have different body structures, so they cannot be combined. The guy changed his thinking and was ready to change his way of improvement. The emperor continued to make the participants who challenged him one by one. One guy asked a man to try his heavenly disaster. He was convinced that the immortal thunder of the inner demons is the most difficult to overcome, and it was not for anyone to force. Jiang Li acknowledged that the current opponent has a good imagination, once decided to apply this technique. Qin Luan was surprised that the emperor immediately recognized the type of thunder of heavenly disaster. But it was clear, because he had the experience of overcoming 15 immortal trials. The ruler attracted the opponent to himself, and he did not understand as possible, because according to the non-recunable laws of the world of the unbroken, only people can cross the thunderous disasters. He knew that the more the sorrows of people overcome, the more this technique should become stronger. Now the strength of the immortal thunder of the inner demons has grown uncontrolled pace. Meng Chun felt a powerful technique and was afraid to think about how strong blows of the thunder were faced by two people in the center of disaster. However, with the emperor and the guy who challenged him, was normal because they were protected by the barrier. Meng Chun saw that the man coped with a double thunder sorrow and left the second guy to just fight his inner demons. Jiang Li felt nothing, so he believed that this technique was still not strong enough. Only such power was able to imagine the one who controls it. With the idea of spatial movement, the emperor teleported to himself under the Qin Luan barrier. He decided that it was worth trying to increase the lightning power 4 times. Qin Luan immediately dulled panic and thought that the emperor wanted the guy to face his inner demons, so there was no reason to worry about the horrific blow of thunder. After that, another lightning attack was sent to the protective barrier, more powerful than the previous one. But Jiang Li was still dissatisfied because it was only a little tick this time. When the man cast his gaze at other participants, they immediately trembled from the thought that their turn came. But they calmed down, seeing that he was not paying attention to them. They lacked experiences to combat internal demons. Jiang Li could not destroy the future talents of 9 regions just because he wants a thunder to make it. The man noticed that a participant near him could not overcome his inner demons. He brought him to consciousness, saying that the boy knew how to make someone fight the devils but cannot withstand his own. And he advised to think carefully about how to overcome his inner demons when he decides to return. The player asked the Emperor of People why he was not delayed in the fight against the devils. There was no way to avoid internal demons. As soon as the trigger triggers, the cultivator remains only to face them. There are no exceptions. Jiang Li suggested that he had long been intimidated by his monsters so much that they did not even dare to appear in front of him. His inner demons took the form of emperors of people of past generations, but could not even overcome it. Jiang Li's power simply had no limits, so it was unclear who was still a real monster. Before leaving, the participant bowed and sincerely thanked the emperor for the guidance. He saw that Qin Luan was still fighting his inner demons. His state of mind has caused a sincere impression. After a while, the guy returned to consciousness, finally overcoming his inner monsters. Jiang Li acknowledged that Qin Luan is really suited to become a candidate for the post of Emperor of People. He has a clear talent and reason. Sun Ying also rejoiced in the boy, because in all 9 regions there will be not many people who can overcome their demons at the stage of laying. The Emperor of People asked the guy what shape was taken by his internal monsters. Qin Luan replied that when he was a child, the mentor often left him alone in the monastery. It was dark inside, and it seemed like ghosts were found there. He was really scared. However, the guy's inner demons were not ghosts, but his master Yuan Wuxing. As soon as he accepted this account, the guy said well. Zhang Li was surprised because he met the guy mentor in front of the gate of the city and now faced his student in the secret kingdom. He hoped that they did not chase him. Meng Chun has announced that the test was completed and, based on the results of 2 checks, it will reward the 30 best players. The participants thanked the Emperor for the guidance, promising that they would never forget this day. When the lounge arrived, the man wondered if she was satisfied. Meng Chun replied that she hoped to look at the power of the legendary stage Mahayana, but the hero never showed his true power. Zhang Li was not able to do it. Except for the guy who turned into a dragon and was in the stage of overcoming sorrow, all others were only at the fusion stage. He could not fight them because it would be a shadow on their hearts, and if the hero became their inner demon, it would be incredibly difficult to cultivate further. Meng Chun acknowledged that the Emperor was right and asked why he would not test his strength of Mahayana's stage on her. The woman has almost reached the stage of overcoming sorrow and has repeatedly seen experts in her level in action. Zhang Li agreed to her proposal. Meng Chun could freely use Tao dreams and illusions in her world, making it able to give the truth for lies, imaginary for reality, and mix visions. In addition, in her arsenal, a woman had many possible seductive techniques, but even more so, she could not avoid the participation of being easily defeated by the Emperor. Meng Chun said that it is not surprising that the Mahayana stage is much less frequent than the ascension to immortality. Then she announced that the Emperor of People ranked first, and according to the award rules, the woman had to fulfill 1 request. Meng Chun asked her husband if he wanted her to give him his technique for a millennial-long dream, or to tell stories since his former times, or he would prefer her body. The system congratulated the user with a successful completion of the task and was preparing to be awarded. Zhang Li replied that he had already violated the rules of the secret kingdom when he came here without permission. Especially, he did not want to steal the opportunity in the younger ones at the stage of laying the foundations. Then, the hero suggested to exclude him from the awarding places to allow the second place to become the first, the third, the second, and so on. The woman was disappointed with the lack of romance. Since the eldest Meng Chun did not take steps to invade her husband into a secret kingdom, Zhang Li instead suggested that she voice her desire. The rest of the Oblivion asked the Emperor whether he could pull it out of the secret kingdom and return it to 9 regions. The man replied that he could not do so. Meng Chun was a little upset from the heard answer. The Emperor thought that she was well aware of her situation because at the moment he was just a delusion of thoughts, attracted to the secret kingdom of Suan Miao. Before leaving this place, Meng Chun should collect the triple spiritual beginning and 7 unclean spirits. The woman replied that the main body did not withstand the heavenly trial and had already gone for reincarnation and asked her not to comfort her. However, according to the Emperor, if Meng is able to maintain his current state for 200 years, he will be able to create a soul from nothingness. After that, she could become a separate life, independent of the lonely of oblivion. Most creatures in this world were born as a result of soul's reincarnation, but exceptions were also exclusive. When someone gathers enough spiritual, the essences of the sun and the moon, and such natural substances can manifest a reason and a new soul over a long time. Finally, the Emperor promised that after 200 years would protect her path, which the girl thanked. Qin Luan returned and saw his mentor, who learned that the guy had gone to the secret kingdom and thought that the students of other sects would punch him, so he immediately hurried to support. The guy assured that the man has nothing to worry about, and he would not allow others to mock himself. They both wanted to share the outstanding news that the Emperor of the People Zhang Li met. Seeing familiar faces, the hero missed that fate decided to bring them all together. He reported that Qin Luan has every chance of coming up for the post of the next Emperor of People, and the same applies to Yuan Wuxing. The man was good in nature and good talent, only the mind was not very, and the heart is timid. The experience that the mentor received in the City of Prices gave him enlightenment and eliminated fears. The man broke in silence and reached the stage of the birth of the soul, with the best quality. Zhang Li told the candidates that whether any of them could become an emperor of people would depend on their luck in the future. Then he added that it was all he wanted to say and said goodbye, hurrying away from them. Qin Luan came to a trip and a desire to go on a trip, but the monastery could not be thrown unattended, so the guy wanted the mentor to remain defended. Yuan Wuxing was a cultivator at the stage of the soul, so he could not shake himself in one place and also wanted to travel around the world and gain experience. So he believed that the student had to remain. Qin Luan recalled that the mentor left a 10-year-old boy of 1, and in 10 years he did not send any news, and now dare to say it. The man explained that he left the Temple of the Pure Wind in search of breakthrough opportunities, and if he had not achieved the stage of birth, he would not be able to defend the student. After a while, a sign appeared on the door of the Monastery of the Clean Wind that the student and mentor went to travel to 9 regions. The date of their return is unknown. Sun Ying was angry that the guy decided to go alone and decided that she would go in search of him now. After completing the task, the emperor ordered the system to give him the awards promised for it. The man was very glad that he would soon be able to instantly enter the world of immortal. There was only one benefit from this stupid system, the discovery of the function of spatial teleportation to go to other universe. There was a window with the message that the user can now spend source points to fill the contents of the book simply by touching its cover. The number of points will depend on its severity. Zhang Li couldn't say that this feature was completely meaningless, but it would not be particularly needed. After that, a message was reported to unlock spatial teleportation with requirements for it. The emperor was waiting for an incredibly long time, so he ordered him to finally send him to the immortal world. The system asked the user to provide it with the coordinates of the desired teleportation universe. The world of the immortals was huge, so the emperor of people could not know his coordinates. But he reproached that if he knew where to go, he would have done it for a long time and he would not need any system. The man was incredibly annoyed by this mechanic, because since its appearance, he could not get any useful function or thing. She gave him only a set of newcomer for practice at the hardening stage of these. The items of the store worse than those that the emperor had, and a senseless card fragment and a spiritual weapon that broke from one drop of blood. Zhang Li swung and he kissed the window with an incredibly strong blow in every possible way, calling the fighting system. After this attack, the space in front of him cracked and opened the portal to other universities. While the man knows the coordinates of another world, he can easily punch the path, and then no teleportation would be needed. The air flows and turbulence with which the hero faces, crossing the void, do not pose any threat to him. The only reason why the hero did not try to physically cross the space to find the world of immortal is the risk of getting lost, because he may not be able to find the right way or back. The system then issued a message that she found an unknown world behind the void. It was not surprising that the immortal kingdom controls the innumerable worlds, and in each of them there is a ladder of the ascension. While the person meets the criteria of the deity, he can rise and become immortal. Among all residents, most of them from 9 regions, Emperor Zhang Li pointed to a fault and asked if the other world is behind it. The information window confirmed, which could mean that there was one of the many universes which control the immortal. The hero also suggested that this fault may still be a ladder. The system asked the user whether he wanted to move there. It seems that she was not so tin. In response to this question, the man asked if he could and then turn it back. Considering the features of this mechanics, there is a great chance that the hero gets lost and will be like Robinson Crusoe, and may even write a book, Notes on the Travel of the Emperor of People. The system has issued that the coordinates of the 9 regions, so teleportation back is quite possible. Zhang Li was satisfied with this answer, so he said not to wait and to teleport it immediately. The repel system issued a message that the user did not have enough source points for teleportation. The hero became angry because of these stupid demands and asked how he could get these points. The system replied that this requires performing tasks or selling items for a third of the price indicated in the store. Zhang Li thought that if the mechanics had a drop of conscience, then she would not buy anything at a lower price, but sold at full. The system asked whether the user wanted to accept a minor task for earning a source. The first mission of the man was to go to Mount Shoyan and get 100 kilograms of local stones. As a result, the hero brought a whole mountain spine, which was exactly not less than the specified weight. The system congratulated the user with the completion of the minor task and issued 50 points of the source. The emperor ordered him to be released into the world just found. However, 56,800 points were required. Because of their lack of movement, was impossible. Zhang Li was sure that if this stupid system had a real body, then he would have been the first thing to detract her. The man understood that such a number of points would earn eternity, and was angry because he was not immediately told that they would need so much. The emperor ordered the store to open because he understood that he had only to sell items in exchange for points. The most common were martial arts, the cheapest suitable for cultivation to the stage of the golden kernel and cost 100 points. The most expensive, capable of bringing to immortality and costing 1,000,000. The emperor looked at the sky and began writing the art of sunset. This technique can be practiced directly until the early stage of the fusion stage. It allows the cultivator to use the sun's rays. Those who are attacked by this art remember the most painful memories of their lives and lose interest in the struggle. After that, a notification of the accrual of 10,000 points of the source appeared in the system window. The hero did not understand why, if it could be done so easily, he was generally dragging a mountain. Then, Zhang Li started writing techniques one by one and selling them to the store. For this, the system counted 110,000 points of sources, which was sufficient for teleportation into an unknown world. After receiving the required number of points, the emperor ordered him to move it there. After that, the man moved to a place resembling space with many galaxies. The hero noted that the spatial technique of the system is quite intricate, so much that he could not understand how it was arranged. Zhang Li could not catch anything because he knew little about the spatial Tao. The hero thought that when the opportunity appeared, it is worth visiting Mount Sumi. The old Buddhist who is there is well versed in this, so he could explain how this function works. When the emperor crossed the border, he found himself in an unknown universe that the system revealed. His gravity was the same as in 9 regions, and the physical structure also coincided in many aspects. But for some reason, the density of the spiritual here was quite low here, although in 9 regions it was also distributed unevenly. It is extremely rare, but in the native lands of the emperor, there were prohibited areas in which the spiritual energy was missing. If someone is cultivated in such places, even having single spiritual roots, it is unlikely to be able to reach the stage of laying the basics. The hero felt that the energy in this world is even less than in the forbidden areas of 9 regions. That is, a practitioner would never be born in such a place. Zhang Li could not find any person in the area of coverage of his spiritual consciousness. However, he later noticed a crowd of unknown creatures who gathered together nearby. When the monsters saw a man, they immediately attacked him, and he used a protective barrier against them. Having examined unknown beings, the emperor concluded that he had never seen anything like in 9 regions. These creatures ate sand not only because they were very hungry, their bodies were arranged so that they could only digest it. The man has never encountered such digestive organs, breathing and other functions of the body. If it was not so skilled in the analysis of his spiritual consciousness, the hero would not even be able to find out what these structures needed in their body. These monsters were incredibly strong physically. The leader of the flock was at the level of the stage of the golden nucleus, and in others, at the stage of laying the basics. For some reason, instincts suggested the emperor that they should stay away. These creatures caused him very unpleasant sensations, so the man went to another place. Slightly watching, Zhang Li now understood why this group of ash-grey animals feeds on sand. All because, except for him, these animals, there is nothing else. Not to mention people. There were not even other types. If the system told the man that it was hell, and these monsters were the birth of the underworld, he would probably believe. Wandering a little, the emperor asked him to be returned to 9 regions. He thought that in comparison with this place, his homeland is more reminiscent of the world of immortal. That unknown universe was no longer interested in it. The only thing that can be done is to try to overcome the heavenly test to check if there is a ladder there. Zhang Li did not reject the opportunity that that world could be associated with the kingdom of the immortals. The hero decided to try to open some more spatial faults, so he began to strike in the air. However, after that, the system did not send any reports of finding an unknown world. The Emperor of People thought that for the first time he was just very fortunate to get such a find. After that, he worked as a mascot of the hero. He wanted to contact Jung Kunhu, which completed the investigation that his brother instructed him. The man reported that all the former candidates for the role of the Emperor of People said they had never faced a man in black. Zhang Li did not understand why the stranger was so sure that the guy would become the next ruler, and suggested that he may really simply spread a demonic doctrine. The man instructed his brother to go to the Tower of the Mysteries of Nature to find out who taught Zhang Yixing techniques of cultivation of the demonic path 380 years ago. He no longer had to do in Dazhou, so the hero decided to return to the Temple of the Emperor. Suddenly, the system has sent a new task. A recruitment at the University of the Dynasty will begin soon. 4 academies have the highest priority, so 60% of students are accepted from there. She believed that the man did not belong to any of them, and that those who study there laugh at him. The task was that the hero would take the first place in the entrance examinations of the Imperial University of Dazhou. He could be abandoned. The awards for the performance were Blood Drops of True Dragon, Pill for Transformation into a Demonic Beast, Access to the Special Task, Labyrinth of the World of Immortal. The Emperor of People asked the system to explain to him what the last point means. He came to the window with information that the task is not available, so the user has no rights to this information. Zhang Li was interested in learning about the maze of the immortal world, so he accepted the task. In addition, the hero was not long at Dazhou University of Imperial University. It was a great opportunity to visit there. The course of events is transferred to the memories of the Emperor of People on the day when the robbers were chased after him. The man just broke into the stage of laying the basics and already suggested that he may have met his end there. He understood that if you lose nothing, you could burn your spiritual root of 5 elements and get a short-term outbreak of force at the expense of an internal explosion. The robbers considered the guy just crazy because he signed a death sentence. Even if he succeeds in surviving, the whole later life of Zhang Li will be a layman without spiritual power. They rushed to him, emphasizing that life without these in 9 regions is even worse than death. Thereafter, a strong explosion came in the forest, which decided to the fate of several people. The disinfected robbers lay on the ground, and the protagonist managed to survive after a desperate act. Zhang Li was incredibly surprised that his spiritual root remained with him. Though the guy returned to the 9th level of the hardening stage, his base became stronger. He was exhausted to the ground with the idea that he could still be cultivated. After the morning awakening, the hero was surprised to feel that he reached the 10th level of quenching. Zhang Li did not understand what happened to its cultivation, because if it continues, it would even be able to achieve the stage of laying the basics. The future emperor heard that Dazhou has a place with the largest collection of books, a library of the Imperial Institute, and suggested that he may be able to find a response there. On the road, he met a friend and asked to show how to get to the right place. Fortunately, he just went there, so they went together. Blondie heard Zhang Li again fell in the formations lesson. He replied to it that he knew. The guy casts from cultivation, and his elders complain that he spends the talent of double pupils in vain. The emperor threatened that he was able to wave his fists well, and asked a friend if he wanted to check. The interlocutor replied that it was time for him to go to the next class. Based on the systematic knowledge of the cultivation that a man received at the institute during this period, he suggested that he had a heavenly spiritual root, which also awakened earlier than it belongs. Such a root often hides itself, showing the world only the spiritual 5 elements, and awakens only when the practice goes to the stage of the soul, after which the cultivator reaches the peaks. They are rare enough because it is very difficult to reach this stage, having a spiritual root of 5 elements. Therefore, such people only appear every millennium. Zhang Li did not expect that it was he who made Heavenly Root awake. The man acknowledged that joining the Imperial Institute was a good idea because he learned a lot of new ones and dispelled his doubts, though he got acquainted with the basics. The hero looked at the building of his intense training, which he left 500 years ago. And now the emperor has returned to become a student again and accomplished the task from the system. After performing the latter, he opened the reading function at the expense of sources points, and now his new mission is to get the first place for the introductory ones. Obviously, the reward is needed to simplify this task. Without even relying on the system, the hero was able to get the best result among all students at his time. Now, he also has the knowledge of the cultivator at the Mahayana stage, so it will be easy to get around. Therefore, the emperor decided that the use of awards would be a humiliation for his mind. Then he entered the institute and asked himself the best room to prepare for the exams. Zhang Li contemplated young students and mentioned the days when he was preparing for entrance tests. One student thought that the hero was just a lazy man who was hiding back and forth, and his companion immediately noticed that this man was completely ready, and he advised to mention the best students of the institute. They are kicking in the classroom. After the exams, they complain that many are wrong, and the students begin to think that they can finally be the best in the group. However, when the results are announced, it turns out that they are still the first and you are the last. So it is better not to get into your business. The emperor heard the conversation that this time the incredible beauty came to the entrance exam, having never forgotten. The students ran to look at the beautiful girl named Zhang Jingxin. The hero also became interesting who it was. Other boys did not even dare to approach the beauty, and they were angry that this brazen was so easy to take and spoke with her. Zhang Xin could not think for nothing that she would meet the emperor here, and suggested that he may have been fate. The last time the woman has come out for several centuries ago to learn for several years, and since then she has not left the pure land of the junk. Zhang Xin explained to the emperor that this time she just wanted to go out and relax. Zhang Li asked a woman if her name is Zhang Jingxin, but immediately she was heard from heard. She took this nickname from selfish motives, but who would have thought that the virgin would meet the emperor here? She was very ashamed. Zhang Xin asked the man how his name is now. The hero replied that Kun Li, as in the idiom Kun Jun is inferior, which means respecting the elders. The girl did not understand the meaning of this phrase and decided that it would not be better to ask because she wants to look intelligent. The hero wondered that this could be at the Imperial Institute, so that the Virgin's holidays came here. Even if there is something, it is not necessary to enroll there as a student. Zhang Xin asked about the hero's intentions in response because he appeared here every 30 years to read a lecture as a sign of thanks. So it was unclear why he came as an entrant this time. Li said he decided to remember his childhood. As far as the Virgo was known, he joined the Imperial Institute at the age of 20, so something was severely delayed by his childhood. The emperor did not understand where the girl found out how old he was when he just started studying. Zhang Xin suggested that pairs on which of them would take the first place where the lost one must fulfill one request of the winner. The students watched the emperor and envied incredibly because he is so close to beauty. Jiang Xin reported that the immortal Hong Chen wake up several times and every time was a little longer than the previous time. But she still sleeps most of her time, and when he gets up, he says almost nothing, just walks on the clean land and stops for the longest time near the peach tree. Jiang Li said he had met with Meng Jiang and Wei emperors and told them to keep their tooth tongue and stressed that girls should also keep the founder's business in secret. After all, if it is outwardly, the old fools, who have seen immortal earlier, can immediately rush into the clean land of the junk. Jiang Xin understood it perfectly, but also noted that if the founder wanted to escape, they would not be able to stop it. The boys watched the emperor with the desire to kill him and had already negotiated to hire a killer from the heavenly punishment hall. However, they quickly surrendered because they were just students and did not have enough money for it. The emperor decided that now he needed to prepare for the exams, because it is not just about mocking ordinary students. He should surpass the Virgo from the pure land of the junk. A man bought textbooks in a street bench, 8 of which he wrote in person, and the other 2 are just an interpretation of his books. He remembered that when he was preparing for the introductory 500 years ago, he used reference books, widespread in 9 regions. Those who knew the hero thought that he was a distinguished graduate of the institute, and who did not think that he was a teacher who was testing. After reaching the stage, Mahang Li Mahang began to understand cultivation better and outlined all his knowledge of books that trainees could learn. Every cultivator who has reached the fusion should have systematic knowledge, and in the end, without a theoretical support and a deep understanding of the methods of this stage, it is impossible to achieve. Knowledge of spiritual energy in high-level practices is like an unwavering truth for those whose level is lower. Since the emperor is the only Mahayana stage, it is natural that the institute will use his books. Cultivation is one thing, but if a man was asked to write books about alchemy or forging weapons, he would have replied that he was not competent and could not write. Zhang Li knew that since the exam was performed on the books he wrote himself, he could not lose, so he thought it was better to start thinking about what would ask the Jingxin holidays. Subsequently, the exam began and, looking at the question, the hero was sure that he did not lose exactly here. The first task was to define cultivation according to the basic principles. The man wrote that it is a process in which living things absorb the spiritual and gradually become stronger. In the next question, it was asked to explain why in the first chapter, Emperor of the Emperor of People Zhang, the author wrote, "There was heavy rain a few days, and today it was finally cleared." The man remembered that in those days there was a rainfall that did not stop and the sun was not visible for several days. But one morning the weather finally cleared, and Zhang Li thought about what a beautiful sunny day and recorded his feelings. After the examination, the emperor asked the saint as her first stage. The girl replied that she had already thought that she would ask after her victory. Zhang Li replied that this is a real coincidence because he also decided in detail, so only the future would show how it would be next. Suddenly, the system sent a notification with the information that the task is fail. Considering the rating of participants, the emperor could not believe his own eyes. Jing Xin sweeping that they are both in the first place, only she was at the end, and it is from the end. The girl barely restrained the laughter that the Emperor of People failed his own exam and took the last position in the rating. Zhang Li, upset, looked at the opponent and told her she could laugh if she wanted. The Holy Virgin suggested that today was not his day, but the Emperor was convinced that there was a mistake here. The hero led the girl to the rector to find out whether those who took the exam, evaluating the candidates, were mistaken. Jiang Li really came to the office of the institute's head with claims why he was at the end of the list. If the man had taken second place and lit up the task for this reason, he could still accept it. But the last place was a real mockery for him. The rector was amazed that the student had enough arrogance to ask it and announced, "Let everyone see what he wrote." Jing Xin knew that most of the questions were made on the basis of books written by the emperor. She couldn't believe that he had so badly managed with the exam. Other entrants have noted that Kun Li's answers are logical and laconic. There was also mentioned what they had never heard of themselves, so they were sure that this student was very erudite. The rector noted that all the answers could be found in library books, and it was just enough to study. Then the result of the boy would not be so terrible. Jing Xin denied that although the answers written by Kun Li and do not coincide literally with the textbook, but the meaning of them is the same. The rector replied that these books are the work of the entire life of the Emperor of the People Jiang Li, and each word is full of deep meaning, so they cannot be simply replaced by their own. But he noted that at this level, students are not able to understand the deep meaning embedded in the textbooks of the ruler, so they just have to seize them and understand them then. The textbook for cultivation is highlighted, but Kun Li summarized everything into one sentence. The rector considered it simply unthinkable. Zhang Li replied that everything is written in detail because this book is written for those who are in the stages of quenching these or laying of bases, and in fact, all the stated there can be summarized. The rector replied that it is simply impossible because the Emperor of People is very wise, and his books are useful to all, regardless of age and level of cultivation. But he noted that he studied the teaching of the ruler for more than 100 years, and he arranges a reception every time he came to conduct a lecture. The man was convinced that no one understood these books better than him. Students knew about this feature of the character of the rector. He constantly insists that the teachings of the Emperor of People should be irreplaceable, and every word in his theories is indisputable. On the question of understanding the reed, the man insisted that it cannot be that the writings of Zhang Li have no deep sense. He was convinced that the ruler would not just write that after the rain a sunny day came, but rather meant that in cultivation is full of difficulty, how this rain which need to be overcome. Zhang Li asked the rector, from which he took, that the words of the emperor should always have deep meaning and hidden meanings. The man was angry because of the guy's arrogance and asked who he was to humiliate the ruler. Zhang Li wondered why no one doubts that everything written by the emperor has a deep meaning. Every word is indisputable, and behavior is perfect. The rector stressed that the ruler is a respectable graduate of his institute, and if the guy will study at the same school, it will be a huge shame for them. Students felt incredible pressure from the office, which was difficult to even breathe. Jing Xin was shocked that the rector uses the impact of the cultivator at the fusion stage to intimidate the students and realized that it could not be left. Zhang Li saw that the girl was going to do something and stopped her prematurely, asking her behavior, and really disgraced the name of the Emperor of People. He then removed the mask and said that, in his opinion, the rector was the only one who deletes his name. From surprise, the man lost his balance and fell. But he was incredibly shocked, learning that the Emperor of People was Zhang Li. The entrants were satisfied with such a surprise. They always did not like the rector forcing books. The hero said that when he joined the institute, the approach to learning was open and the students were free, so there were various scientific theories. And now, this place has become a Zhang Li school, which is taught by books about cultivation that a man wrote for practitioners in the stages of quenching these and laying the foundation. He even found time to come here and lectures for students to enlighten students to direct them to a comprehensive understanding of cultivation and non-standard thinking. But it seems that it was in vain. The rector blushed the emperor that it was all a misunderstanding, because he didn't know that he would come as Kun Li, and if he was informed, he would appreciate his work. Zhang Li replied that it was not about who he was, but that the old man has not yet realized his mistake. It was a continuous disappointment. Finally, the emperor ordered the students to give a lecture, which will be called, "It is impossible to believe every word of authority." Jing Xin tried to reassure the man because he lost only one request, and she wouldn't make him do anything wrong. But the emperor sighed only because of his self-confidence, he missed the chance to find the way to the world of immortal. The girl was surprised, receiving such an answer, and asked if the man found any tips again. She recalled that in order to find the kingdom of the immortal, Zhang Li often did various unusual things. For example, he heard somewhere that if you collect all 4 pearls of the dragon, you can get there, then went to ask them to borrow them from the king of dragons. And as a result, even after polishing to glitter, no passage to the kingdom of immortal appeared. The man then thought that it was possible to collect 7 pieces to get everything, but there were only 4 of them. Zhang Li began to explain everything, but suddenly tied the mascot of communication and interrupted his words. The head of the Tao sect appeared and reported that he was looking for an emperor of people, calling a man a sect traveler. Gigi was pleased to see the holy Jing Xin and glad that he would not have to see the displeased face of the Taoist nun Qin Yu. Zhang Li threatened the head that if he wanted him to be present at the assessment of the immortal weapons of the sect, then it is better for him to treat the emperor with respect. Gigi immediately changed his behavior, emphasizing that he was very glad about it and informed the guy that he had been joining them. According to him, the heavenly seal of Yin Yang will be ready for self-improvement in 20 days. Namely, the assessment of immortal weapons will begin in 15. Zhang Li will represent the temple of the emperor of the people, and the holiday Jing Xin will be the pure land of the junk. The hero was very angry because this boy spreads his gossip behind his back, so he completed this conversation. Zhang Li said that just more than 10 days remained and asked the girlfriend how they would get to the Tao sect. The woman replied that they could go there on a flying ship. She traveled for a long time. The road to the Tao sect on this transport will take 10 days. Jing Xin intentionally did not offer to fly on their own, because then they would only spend half a day. However, the Emperor of People rejected this proposal, emphasizing that he would fly better. Jing Xin was upset by a man if he really leaves a weak girl alone on a flying ship, and whether she is afraid that she could face dangers. Zhang Li knew that the virgin was in the late stage of the fusion stage and that no danger was threatened. The only thing that can alert is the celestial demon outside the territory. Having analyzed his last assumption, the emperor thought that the attack of this monster was afraid of Jing Xin. He suspected that the girl made such a conclusion after the events in the villages of Shanghai and Saya and learned to be careful, so he agreed to propose to go on a flying ship together. The emperor understood that the likelihood of making her fears had, but could not be given the caution that she began to develop from the virgin. On the same day, they went on a journey and almost flew to the Bai's Empire. Other passengers on the deck were talking that the current emperor there is a hybrid of Baitz and Silin. Jingxin has heard that Baizi is a powerful creature, a horned lion with the head of a dragon who is able to speak well and has impressive knowledge. Zhang Li knew that demonic beasts were in favor of blood purity, so they did not recognize the current emperor, and he could not use the fate of the state to suppress 8 kings. It is because of this that chaos prevails among the hellish beasts, and their state has turned into a bandit den. Suddenly, a monster flew into the deck which felt a large number of spiritual stones and demanded that people give it away. Lord Oral immediately regretted his intentions because he got a strong blow to his back. The son of Buddha appeared to the attacker to stand on a righteous path and end his crimes. The young Confucian added that it is not noble at all. Both men were heading to the Tao sect, so they stopped the demon eagle immediately. Wu Ji greeted the Wang Bian and announced that he was going to the assembly from the assessment of the immortal weapon to expand his outlook a little. The girls were incredibly pleased to see the son of Buddha, the last student of the Chumi mentor, and with him, a traveler of the Confucian sect. It was rumored that the son of the Wuz Buddha is his reincarnation. After birth, the man turned a small town into Buddhist land. Hearing this, Shu Mi took him to the students and declared as heir. Wang Bian is a traveling student of the Confucian sect, despite his youth, has already become a national mentor of 7 great powers known as countries of high moral qualities. The WW decultivation was moving incredibly quickly. It broke into the stage of the soul of 14 years of age, becoming the youngest cultivator that reached such heights. Jingxin was wondering if this man could really be a Buddha reincarnation. She asked this at the old Shu Mi, but he just smiled and said nothing. Not everyone who falls into heaven can be called Buddha. This applies only to those who have deep knowledge of his teachings and has their land in the western heaven of the immortal world. Jiang Li asked the girl whether she was only interested in this because this man can become her grandfather, because he likes Qin Yu. Jingxin did not understand anything because the emperor had already dealt with a young man who had her mentor in love. The hero stressed that after that, she could completely love another son of Buddha. The Emperor of People also did not know the truth. He was not particularly understood in reincarnation. The man has been living for more than 500 years, but has not yet found out whether he has moved to this world or just awakened his memories from his former life. The old Buddhist Chumi said that the nature of the son of the Buddha Wuji is even better than him. He believed that the guy had the potential to become the next emperor of people and intended to promote his candidacy. It doesn't matter if this new moon is a Buddha reincarnation. In one emperor, he was sure. In his past life, he was an incredibly strong man. Jingxin knew that the man was well versed in the souls, so she wondered what he saw. Jiang Li replied that a soul that does not meet her age is incredibly strong and enduring. And although the guy is only at the stage of the birth of the spirit, it has traces of thousands of trials past. This is not something that should be in a 14-year-old monk. When people reincarnate, their soul is completely cleansed. They become completely new creatures. Because of this, Li could not say who Wu Ji was in his past life. But he saw that the boy's soul was so strong that even the rebirth could not erase the traces on it. The only explanation is that he was incredibly strong in his past life, so much that he was able to influence himself. And whether Wu Ji was Buddha before reincarnation could not be learned. Men tried to assure that noble creatures should appreciate justice, and salvation comes to the who repented. The monster replied that their moral influence is effective only against those who are below the level of the golden nucleus, and he is a demon at the stage of the soul. The boys were disappointed that their appeals could not reach the striker's heart. So, Buddhist and Confucian used their martial arts and captured Lord Eagle. Wang Bian stressed that the constant use of force is harmful to the state of mind. But the interlocutor did not listen to the boys, so they had no other way out. They thought it was worth trying to assure him again. Buddhist and Confucian began to read morals about the kindness of human nature, that there are no bad people, and that treasures are just a fleeting pleasure, and it is necessary to reject obsession. Listening to this, Lord Oral began to sob and think about whether it is not too late to repent. The girls on board watched men and were incredibly rejoiced when they saw copies of Pagoda Brahma and calligraphic registration of the Great Confucian, because for the first time in their lives, such treasures were met. The first was the greatest weapon of the Buddhist school of Mount Sumi, an extremely heavy tower. similar to a pocket space compressed in one line. If you throw it with all its strength, even the cultivator at the stage of overcoming the catastrophe will not risk taking a blow. It has the ability to break the space by allowing the user to travel between the kingdoms. Although calligraphic prescription of the Great Confucianism does not have the same status as Pagoda Brahma, this is still an important Confucian artifact. It is enough to write only one word on it, and it will instantly appear in reality. The girl suspected that men only have copies because no Buddhist monastery or Confucian school would allow their young students to carry their originals with them. The emperor acknowledged that although replicas are not as good as real, more than sufficient to protect, because they also belong to the category of Taoist weapons. Treasures in 9 regions are classified into 4 levels. The first is spiritual artifacts. They are sharp and stronger, but do not have any special abilities. This kind of cheapest, so cultivators of the stage of laying of bases can easily get them. The second level is magical weapons. It is more powerful than the first. It can be connected with the user's mind and be guided at a distance that can develop weak intelligence and autonomously protect its owner. The cultivator of the stage of origin of the soul can afford such an artifact, but he will have to spend half of his property. The third level is Taoist's weapons. It is incredibly difficult to create because it requires a deep understanding of Tao, similar to the Tao of the time that the imperial family Dacho has. There are also Tao spaces, dreams and so on. In addition, the materials for its creation are very rare. Even among the cultivators of the stage of transformation of the spirit, few can afford them. Only the richest cultivators are able to buy this. The fourth level includes immortal artifacts. No one in 9 regions is able to create them, all currently existing, except for the heavenly seal of Yin Yan, created by the ancestor of the Tao to his ascension, brought from the immortal world former deities. Such artifacts can be listed on your fingers. The most famous are the heavenly sect of the Tao sect, the Buddhist Pagoda Brahma, and the calligraphic prescription of the Great Confucian. Jingxin looked at the treasures that the boys had and acknowledged that Wang Bian was really a copy. The woman herself has a Taoist artifact, 12-petal blue lotus, so he knows a lot about them. Virgo shared her assumptions that Pagoda Brahma is not a Taoist weapon. The Emperor of People replied that she was quite right, because this artifact is quite real. Zhang Li was surprised that the old Shu Mi appreciates the new son of Buddha so much that he allowed him to bring out a similar thing. He noticed that at his current level, the monk was not able to use the Brahma Pagoda at full capacity. However, if the guy finds himself in danger, the artifact will automatically protect him, removing the threat. Even the cultivator at the fusion stage will meet his end. The emperor believed that it was not good that these 2 younger ones depend on their treasures at such a young age, because being the true heirs of their teachings, they could defeat this demon by themselves. This was not only about them, it seemed to the man that all the cultivators are now. They buy artifacts, even if you have to spend all their money on it and then use them against all in a row. They would better spend more time on practice, because only when you are strong, you can truly consider it. Jingxin said nervously that the treasures are really useful, because not everyone can be like the emperor and leave the immortals to clean the dust. Zhang Li acknowledged that in her words there was a sense and decided to say nothing more. He was strained by this offended look. The Holy Virgin suddenly felt a dark aura and looked around to understand what was happening here. Young cultivators continued their sermons, but now they were listened to by all the members of the deck. People began to swear that from this day they would glorify the sacred writings daily, sacrifice the money of the monk, and lead a righteous lifestyle in order to degenerate themselves in the next life. The elderly people decided that when he returns, they would devote their lives to their country and sect. They would serve with incredible dedication as they breathe. Jingxin did not remember that Buddhism and Confucianism was so vicious. It was more like brainwashing. The emperor replied that ancient writings have a great influence on the human consciousness, and he noted that if you understand them incorrectly and just read them randomly, it is easy to arrange mass brainwashing. One day, the Buddhist monk who held a high position went singing sacred writings. He was so fascinated that he accidentally washed the brains of believers in a small town and led them to the sea. As a result, all people who couldn't swim just sink, and when the man realized the seriousness of his mistake, he decided to move to the dark side and turn to the evil. The monk accepted a demonic Tao, The old Buddhist Shumi was unable to get himself intervening and asked the emperor to help with the student's destruction. Zhang Li noted that this outstanding monk was the previous son of Buddha, those who had a girl's mentor. The emperor understood that if the boys are now stopping their singing, then the brainwashing would end. Lord Oral appealed to the Buddhist and the Confucian, asking if they were cults, because they could not be forcibly changed. But the boys continued their sermons with the idea that only one of them would be the first to enlighten the demon. The emperor began to dislike it, so he gave both the fools on the Makitri ordered to wake up. The man emphasized that their teachings are far from righteousness and that the boys went out of the righteous path, and if they continue in the same spirit, they will find themselves on the demon. When they came to their senses and looked around, they saw that they accidentally began to wash their brains with others. The emperor asked the cultivators to rush to scatter their strength so that people were able to return to normal life. The members of the board could not understand what had just happened because they listened to the young men's sermons and remembered only how they came there. The Buddhist and the Confucian thanked Zhang Li for awakening them and wondered who he was. The boys were really surprised to hear the name of the Emperor of People from a stranger. Lord Eagle cried, because he just came here to arrange a small robbery and was face to face with a high-ranking Buddhist monk, a Confucian scientist, and now with the ruler. Wang Bian and Wu Ji immediately caught their eyes because they had an idol itself, their example to follow. The emperor put a sound barrier not to be surrounded by people. He felt as if he had become one of the celebrities from his past life that should be disguised in public. Zhang Li stressed that because of their petty competition, the boys got out of the true path and almost got into trouble. Confucian and Buddhist began to emphasize that they were wrong and promised that they would no longer repeat such mistakes. The emperor heard that these two were going to the conference on the assessment of the immortal artifact of the Tao sect, so he asked where their mentors. Wu Ji replied that his teacher is now at the critical stage of comprehending the Tao of space. He cannot be disturbed, so Shu Mi sent a monk instead. Wang Bian replied that his mentor was starting to be angry. He only should see the sect leader. The emperor recalled that he had a personal dislike for Ji. The leader of the Confucian school of Dong Zhongchen adheres to the theory of natural tendency to goodness. He worked hard to teach people to be noble and crystal honest. The man was convinced that his subjects had returned to cultural and humanity, and wanted to swoon in front of Tao's head. Ji, however, believed that human nature was greedy, so he took a handful of first-class spiritual stones and threw them into the crowd. The nobles immediately began to create chaos, pouring on each other for the sake of prey. This was incredibly matched by Confucian leader. Wang Bian announced that Dong Zhongchen wants to look at the self, improvement of the immortal artifact, so the guy went only outside. The man will come to the conference secretly. The emperor acknowledged that the Confucian is quite smart and thought that his noble soul was afraid of his good heart. Suddenly, the system has instructed a new task. Despite the fact that the man won first place, his classmates make fun of him. You need to win everyone on a cultural test at the end of the semester. Zhang Li rejected this task with the opinion that missions related to the immortal maze are unlikely to appear soon. Jing Xin couldn't understand what he refused. 10 days have passed and the flying ships finally reached the destination, the Tao sect where the conference will take place. Ji happily announced that he from the Dong Zhongchen from the Confucian school gathered to congratulate the Zhang Li, Emperor of People. Wang Bian was incredibly ashamed because his teacher was caught. Because of this, the guy just wanted to stay on a flying ship. Ji approached his brother, saying that on behalf of their whole sect, he greets the Emperor of People at a conference on the assessment of the immortal artifact. Zhang Li sincerely thanked the leader, tightly clamping him in his arms so it became difficult to breathe. The young man quickly pushed his brother, telling St. Jingxin that he did not see her so long ago. Their relationship with the Emperor of People remained the same. The girl wanted to stifle him just in place, but she realized that she had to hold herself in her hands because she was looking at Zhang Li. On the way to the temple, the emperor asked how the study of the protective array of 9 regions was moving. Ji was not happy with the raising of such an alarming question at the time of their meeting and asked if they could talk about something more enjoyable, because he almost had been speaking because of the matter. Jiang Li sarcastically said that at the stage of overcoming the disaster for revival, one drop of blood, and stressed that he could always beat the boy so that he would revive and turn his hair. The leader of the sect shouted that even hated landowners were not as cruel as the emperor. Jingxin wondered if men were talking about the protective array of 9 regions, which opposed the invasion of extraterrestrial heavenly demons. She added with sadness that when it comes to these horrific creatures, she must really be extremely cautious. Heavenly demons come from other worlds. In 9 regions, they appear every 100 years, and every time they bring with them a catastrophic crisis. Throughout the history of mankind, countless emperors have opposed this threat, and more than half of them died in cruel battles. The invasion of heavenly demons rarely ended, until Zhang Li appeared. He won their invasion 3 times and saved 9 regions every time. Although the hero easily destroyed the monsters, the problem was in the speed of time. After all, while the emperor learns about the appearance of demons and gets to them, they can arrange large-scale chaos, causing millions of deaths. Jingxin asked if in this case the men were going to use a protective array to soften the impact. It was true. Zhang replied that this formation could last 15 minutes, which is enough for him to get to the right place. Ji stressed that there are 2 difficulties with this array. First, its support requires a huge amount of spiritual energy. To do this, the hero appealed to 6 large sects and 9 major dynasties to provide 6 practitioners at the fusion stage. The Temple of the Emperor also sent 2, and as a result, 8 cultivators will constantly transfer spiritual energy to support the array. No one was immune to the invasion of heavenly demons, so sects and dynasties are unlikely to be denied. The head added that the second problem is that the formation is too big. There has never been an array that would cover all 9 regions. It was not just about expanding the barrier. You also need to consider the terrain, transportation of spiritual power, and overload. Due to all of the nuances of the protective formation, it was an incredibly difficult task. If he tried to take the cultivator at the fusion stage, it would simply burst into blood, which is why the GG began to project it only after a break in the stage of overcoming the disaster. Then, the man happily announced that they could greet him, because he finished the development of the project of an array of protection of the world. Now he lacked only an immortal weapon that would serve as an eye. The emperor understood that the role of this array is extremely important, so it is natural that as an observer need to choose a treasure capable of withstanding a giant karma. Ji asked Patriarch Guo Changchuna, and he said that heavenly seal yin-yang maintained connection with the sky and earth and has the power of enlightenment and transformation. That is why it was best suited to become an eye of a protective formation. Hearing the name of the man just mentioned, the emperor asked if he was all right with the immortal old man. Ji easily replied that, judging by his appearance, Guo Changchun would be alive even when his head dies from old age. But the emperor asked if he wanted to see him, what Li replied to what he wanted to ask the patriarch something. Jingxin wondered if she could also meet with an immortal old man. She only heard about him, but never seen before. Ji cheerfully replied that of course, maybe adding that the grandfather will only be glad if more people come to him. The chairman had to start preparing for the Immortal Weapon Assessment Conference, so he told the couple to go without him, adding that Guo Changkun was still in his grotto. When 9 regions were still in touch with the immortal world, many deities visited the earth, but they all returned back, spent several hundred years here. And only the old Guo Changkun, a native of this earth after his ascension, acknowledged that the kingdom of heaven was not as attractive to him as his native land. He turned back and no longer left home. Jingxin wondered if the patriarch really was the oldest person in 9 regions, and is it true that he is immortal? The second was the case, but as for whether he was the most age, depended only on the age of Hongcheng founder. Jiang Li suspected that the immortal was a student of the ancestor of Tao, but he did not recognize it. Jingxin was surprised to hear, because she knew that the ancestor lived on this earth more than 50,000 years ago. If this is true, then the immortal old man Guo Changchun really matches his name, not aging and forever alive. The emperor knew that practices could live from 2,000 to 3,000 years at the fusion stage and see the ups and falls of countless states. On the other hand, the immortal old man witnessed the beginning and end of a large number of cultivators of the fusion stage. He found their growth and death. When the couple arrived at the patriarch's place of residence, the emperor announced that he came to him again. Guo Changchunu didn't like that the guy came to him only when there was a problem, because he could simply visit the old one. Jing Xin was obvious that it was an immortal man. A man looked like an ordinary old man who was full everywhere. It was a sign that his blood was collected to the maximum. The Emperor of People replied Guo Changchunu that he is the only one who can help him. The old man looked gently at the guy, because who would have thought that a young man who was not so long ago at the stage of the birth would be so unattainable? It was even difficult for an immortal man to say how strong the current Emperor of People. Guo Changkun replied that now the dust would not be poured out of it, and he could only answer the questions. Zhang Li noted that the immortal old man was too modest and remembered the fact that he could not return to the kingdom of deities. After becoming immortal, all spiritual energy is transformed into an endless, which supports his body. Unfortunately, it was only available in the kingdom of deities, which is why, when the practice descends into the lower world, the strength in his body becomes smaller and smaller. When the emperors of people could not stop the extraordinary demons, the Guo Changchun old man always came to the rescue. But after the latter disappeared, he could no longer return and restore his energy. Now the patriarch is in every effort not to get involved, because as soon as he exhausts his immortal energy, his body will simply destroy and disappear. Guo Changkun replied bitterly that it is not necessary to mention the return to the kingdom of deities. After a tense conversation, the immortal elder suggested that the young people take a walk. He was surprised that the emperor brought someone with him. It was a rarity, and asked where this beautiful girl came from. Jing Xin replied that she came here from the pure land of the junk and added that she was a descendant of the founder. Guo Changkun rejoiced when mentioning the immortal and replied that he had not heard this name for a long time. The patriarch had wonderful spiritual sweets and tea, so he suggested that the girl taste them. Jing Xin thought it would be nice to enjoy the taste of food, but she was worried that the immortal old man suddenly became so inspired. The emperor applied the technique of transmission of sound and announced that this man from those who saw Hongcheng by his own eyes. Guo Changkun addressed the boy and asked what question he came to him this time. Zhang Li realized that the old man was already at a good age and should not be pleased or upset, so the man had to carefully paraphrase his questions. The emperor announced that the immortal Hongcheng was risen and asked the old man what he was thinking about. Suddenly, the man stood up and simply shone in his eyes. This news was incredibly pleased. Guo Changkun announced that he was already in search of love, but the emperor did not like such a sudden change in behavior, so he stopped him instantly. When the immortal Hongcheng came down to our world for the first time, she created a lot of trouble. The old man also went to her to look and quench her curiosity. As soon as he saw it, he fell to his knees and said that he found true love and wanted to worship her all his life. Zhang Li was ashamed of such an old behavior. Jing Xin was amazed, contemplating their disputes, and thought that the emperor could really conquer a real immortal so easily. When Guo Changkun calmed down, the man showed the holy how much Hongcheng's spells work. Even deities cannot resist her. The patriarch asked in a serious voice whether the truth was that the founder of Pure Land was risen. The emperor said that when he was in Dazhou, he suddenly called Zhang Kunhu and announced that a fight had begun through some beauty. Listening to the story of a man, the immortal made an assumption that a new soul was born in the Hongcheng body. He announced that such is not so rare in the immortal world, but has repeatedly witnessed this phenomenon. When a god-shaped person dies, his immortal energy remains in the body, and it is also immortal, so it can develop a mind over time. It becomes a new creature without primary memories. This situation is most likely in the god, shaped, which have become so due to physical cultivation. The emperor himself has nominated the theory of the birth of a new soul, be it spiritual energy or immortal as a result. They lead to the creation of a new spirit. But Zhang Li could not understand what the founder was constantly sleeping. Guo Changkun replied that this is a psychological problem. Newborns know nothing about themselves or the world. Those who have great power are confused and frightened, so they prefer rescue with dreams. He added that when they tell the immortal Hongcheng things from her life, sleep time will decrease. It is the process of gradual acceptance. Zhang Li realized that the old man eventually spent tens of thousands of years in the immortal world and looked a lot. but he threatened the man so that he would not even think to slip into the pure land of Huns, to experience his luck with just a risen woman. Guo Changkun replied that he would never have done so and assured that he was not such a scum. However, the old man was disappointed that the boy so quickly solved his intentions. The emperor still did not know how to solve the situation with the immortal Hong Chung, so he asked for understanding. Everything is normal until it remains on the Pure Land. But what does it want to leave? And should it be released? Now, few people knew about the resurrection of the immortal, so the emperor has strongly asked not to create problems. Guo Changkun understood that if a man told him about it, then he fully trust, as a senior, he could not let them down. Zhang Li also told about a man in black who appeared 380 years ago and about her plan. After the herd, the patriarch concluded that if the intentions of this unknown ended with success, the trust of the people would be undermined. But even so, after the incident, the speed of accumulation of faith in a bronze boiler in the temple of the Emperor of People slowed down a little. Jing Xin did not understand where the consequences came from because the man did nothing wrong. The emperor replied that although one part of the population supported his good intentions, others decided that he was heartless because he had lost his family member. He was worried about another question. How did this man in black could plan everything in advance? If the guy was not so strong that he could not need the power of faith, then the plan could really work. This unknown at least should be on the verge of the stage of the soul because Zhang Yixin had no talent. And who would waste his time to hand over to him the demonic path techniques? Instead of thinking that he was just a casual person, the emperor leaned to the option that he made a conspiracy against him. Guo Changkun suggested that this person is able to see the future of the boy with the help of Tao of Time. Or a stranger is so skillful in the art of divination that he saw the purpose of Li to become an emperor of people or understood it by spiritual. The hero was surprised to hear all these terms because he had never heard about them before and it was quite normal. The patriarch explained that the appointment is connected with the laws of karma, that is, in a person's life, is sometimes something that he cannot avoid. What concerned the art of divination, it suggests that every creature over the head has these, and the difference in color can be understood what achievements are waiting for it. Immortal added that all these cultivation techniques are considered long lost, but it can't be denied that in some destroyed palaces or temples, someone could accidentally come across the remnants. Although Jiang Li and got a hint, but did not understand where to continue his search now. Jing Xin was concerned about the idea of which someone to undermine the trust in the Emperor of People. This meant that the weakening of the human ruler was somehow beneficial to Man in Black. After all, if she succeeds, who then resists the extraterrestrial heavenly demons? Jiang Li shocked such a conclusion. He could not understand how something so simple could catch. The man realized that the weakening of the Emperor of People is only beneficial to heavenly demons. This meant that a traitor or one of the extraterrestrial monsters hiding in their world appeared in 9 regions. After talking to the immortal old man, the couple went to stroll further, thinking everything just said. They were suddenly stopped by the girl, emphasizing that it is impossible to come here because the father imperative and Uncle Fen is busy with the improvement of the artifact. They cannot be disturbed before the work is completed. Zhang Li looked around and realized that they were near the mountaintop of creating artifacts. The man thought about his own and didn't even notice how he found himself here. There were 4 types of external reinforcements that are most commonly used by cultivators: pills, spiritual treasures, mascots, and formations. The alchemical mountain peak, the creation of artifacts, mascots, and formations are the leaders among them. Jing Xin approached the baby, stroked her head, and asked who and how her name is. The girl asked not to touch her and replied that she was 19 Princess Dacho, Zhou Kunkun. Hearing this name, the Emperor of People realized that before them, the daughter of his old friend Zhou Ji. The leader somehow learned that the man was traveling, seeking himself as a student of the SEO sect, and that could mean that he had told him the head of the dynasty. Zhou Kunkun did not expect to hear his father's full name and asked the traveler if he was familiar with him. Jiang Li assured the baby that there was nothing to worry about because they are eventually old friends with Zhou Ji. The guards of the dynasty recognized who before them and congratulated the Emperor of People, a lot shocking the girl. Zhou Kunkun was incredibly glad to see the ruler in front of him because she heard a lot from her father about him. It was interesting for the emperor to listen to what his friend told him. The baby reported that his father glorified her husband as a great hero of 9 regions and the reincarnated true immortal. He also mentioned how many difficulties Li had to go. Zhou even told her daughter how they defended 9 regions, fighting side by side against extraterrestrial heavenly demons. Zhang Li would never think that his long-standing acquaintance about him. After he heard, he decided that when a man was beaten, he would do it a little more softer. Jing Xin was aware that Zhou Ji was not versed in the design of weapons, so it was unclear why he came to the mountain peak of creating artifacts. It was related to the dual pupils of the man. They are very useful in improving new technologies. Fen showed the scheme and asked the head of the dynasty if they increased the firing power by 10% in half an hour. Will it work? Zhou Ji used his Tao time and replied that the oven would explode in 15 minutes. The man asked, "What would happen if you replaced the clean water of the Tian Mountain with the Su Mountain?" The head of the dynasty replied that it would not help, but on the contrary, the strength of the explosion would only increase. Then he again applied his art and finally revealed what could speed up the process. However, in the Zhou Ji scene, he excited a completely different fact, that the man would soon be beaten. Fen thought that since the head was able to see the future, he should be able to prevent problems, so he was sure that everything would be fine. Zhou Ji reported that the emperor himself would beat him and added that he needed to run. Fen knew that the head was quite talkative and suggested that he said what could offend Zhang Li. He grabbed the man and added that in this case, he would go to the peak of the alchemy and search for a pill of great recovery. And if he does not find, he has friends in the sect of stimuli of corpses. Zhou Ji demanded to be released, but it was too late. The emperor broke into the building. The man understood that if he were in Dachau, he might be able to resist Jiang Li. But now they were on the lands of the Tao sect. Before receiving a portion of the blows, he managed to lodge the emperor so that he would not beat in his face. Subsequently, the head of the Tao sect announced that the conference on the assessment of immortal weapons was announced. The leader in the head of the emperor congratulated everyone on this event organized by the Tao sect and was about to explain what he represented. He added that the demonstration of immortal artifacts of various forces will soon begin, where everything is solved with the help of duels. Jing Xin wondered at the man whether he was not eager to look at the expected matches. He replied that he would not say. The presenter said that the duel was about to begin and suggested that everyone look at the stage. The first participant of the Tao sect, Gigi, was the first to see what a fascinating performance he would show. The man was in the stage of overcoming the catastrophe and quite shamelessly chose himself in the opponents of the head of the Confucian school at the fusion stage. Dong Zhongchen ignored the call of Gigi, so the guy had something to do to motivate the participant to fight. The head of the sect began to provoke the Confucian, trying to get him out of balance. The unpleasant behavior of Gigi really annoyed, so it was interesting how Dong Zhongchen, who was able to keep himself in his hands. The head of the Confucian school began to tremble with anger. He accepted the call and agreed to fight. The presenter acknowledged that Gigi used a fairly cheap tactic, but it seems that she worked. The emperor in his head suggested that the Dong Zhongchen be applied for his courage, and immediately put it into reality. After that, the Confucian received a calligraphic prescription of a great scientist. Today, everyone had the opportunity to see this treasure in action. Dong Zhongchen knew that they should use real immortal artifacts, but the only Tao sect weapon is now exposed on the stand, so the man asked the opponent if he was about to fight. Gigi stressed that it is a conference held on his behalf, so he cannot stay away, because it will be a manifestation of weakness on his own earth. The leader began to use teleportation technique, noting that he would not be mocked the opponent and use weapons. Then he found himself right in front of his face and added that he would fight his bare hands against the immortal artifact. The Dong Zhongchen participant wanted to convince Gigi, but he spat into any morality. He had a sudden attack. The match has not even begun, but the head, while at the stage of overcoming the disaster, attacked the opponent by a thumb. It caused indignation even at the presenter. Dong Zhongchen got his famous immortal artifact and wrote the word "kille" on it. The man successfully attached the statement of the calligraphic prescription of the great scientist on the GIG participant. However, in response, the opponent simply removed his clothes, throwing away the threat. The Taoist's appearance of the participant flew away, but he remained in his place, whole and unharmed. The emperor was amazed at this wonderful battle, and Jingxin was surprised why he was so suddenly slammed. The cultivators began to fight for the opportunity to get the GG participant. It was a Taoist artifact, so there was a request to return it back. While everyone was distracted, the Confucian leader wrote another word that was stuck to the opponent. However, the GG participant simply removed his Taoist gift again. It seems that he has come prepared today. However, something went to the plan. The head of the head accepted the battle counter. It seems that he was about to fight with his carrier. The presenter proposed to bring the camera closer and find out what this happens there. It turned out that Dong Zhongchen wrote the word fight on them. It is able to help in the fight, whatever it is attached. Confucian continued his inscription persistently. He wrote battle 3 times in a row. Each of these words turned into warriors in gold armor. They were all on the verge of a fusion. The presenter explained that these fighters are worth the Confucian doctrine. All students leave their image in the calligraphic registration of a great scientist after reaching the fusion stage. And when writing the word battle, these writings turn into guards of Confucianism. The battle became more tense, and the JID participant was in a disadvantage. He was surrounded by his own appearance and 3 Confucian soldiers in gold armor. In addition, the man also had to defend himself against Dong Zhongchen attacks, which resulted in Jijai. The presenter assured that there was no reason to worry because the practice at the stage of overcoming the disaster can be reborn. 1 drop of blood is enough, so the participant will not die. Ji unexpectedly took the initiative. He rejected the appearance and warriors in gold armor. He also approached the leader of the Confucian school and struck him in his face. The presenter friendly reminded that young cultivators are better to look at such cruel scenes of struggle only in the accompaniment of adult practitioners. Dong Zhongchen wrote the word back and returned to his previous position. Suddenly, in the sky, materialized the drilling river. It was the technique of collapse of the year and seas of the Tao sect. The GG participant used his art of Taoism. The throbbing flow of water headed to the Dong Zhongchen, but he absorbed it with the word collect. The brutal battle lasted. GG used his Taoist techniques, and Confucian answered them with calligraphic words. Suddenly, Dong Zhongchen wrote the word death that attacked to the forehead of the leader of the sect of Tao. GG's soul left his body, preparing for revenge for just a rival. However, subsequently, both participants realized that it was just a competition and they just overdone in their actions. The rivals began to press each other's hands, but it somehow lasted long. Subsequently, the leader of the Tao sect began to climb veins, which indicated that someone was dissatisfied with the battle. It turned out that Confucian Dong Zhongchen secretly holds the word power behind his back. The participants finally removed their hands, marking the end of the first match using an immortal artifact. Jingxin appeared a strange feeling as if the emperor had just come to life inside. However, the hero did not want the girl to notice something, so with a stone expression, he replied that it was not. Holidays asked the man what he thinks, who would win if they continued to fight. Zhang Lei replied that Dong Zhongchen used all his strength, but Ji was easily reflected without using any runes or formation. In addition, they have a big difference in combat experience, so the Confucian could not compare with the leader of the sect. But how much Jingxin remembered, the immortal artifact is able to offset the difference between the stages of merger and overcoming sorrow. The emperor replied that this is really the case, but only for artifacts that specialize in the offensive, for example, for stone Taschen from Penlai Island. If Mo Royi's owner could use her weapon, Ji had to endure the beatings. Suddenly a beautiful woman asked, "Is the emperor of people so high thought about herself?" Zhang Li replied that he was telling the truth. He was curious to whom Lady Mo wished to challenge. Among the variants were the Pagoda Brahma Buddhist Monastery with the WWUZI representative. Also, a pumpkin fulfilling the desires from Tianyuan lands against which the woman has repeatedly struggled. The last option was the sword of all-time Dacho dynasty with Zhouji representative. Mo Ruyi replied that the last artifact was able to break time and space, and he had no battles against him. The woman asked Zhouji if she would allow her to test the power of his sword of all time, which the man undoubtedly agreed. With the blessing of the fate of the state, which the ruler received in the Tao sect, he can only reach the boundaries of the fusion stage. It was just suitable for competition with Mo Ruoyi, which was also at this stage. After that, The rivals went out into the arena and began to prepare their immortal artifacts. The woman pulled the Tashan stone, the best attacking weapon. Wherever he was thrown, he will definitely get into the enemy, although it looked like a regular small fragment. The Emperor of People was convinced that the hostess MO is with this artifact, invincible among practitioners at the fusion stage. Zhang Kunhu, known for his physical training, almost died after the fall of this stone in his face. The woman began her attack, thundering an immortal artifact towards the enemy. He reacted instantly, using the sword of all time, causing the stone to stop in front of him. Jing Xin saw that the man waved his sword for a moment, and the artifact slowed down, losing his strength. She heard the legend of the blade of all time. According to her, the ancestor of the Ji family was a fish in the river of time and space. The artifact itself was made of fish bone after its ascension, so it can affect the foundation of the universe. However, the Holy Virgin did not know exactly what principle the sword works. With one blow, the blade shook the time and space around the Tashan stone, making it as if he was flying a huge number of years. MO artifact has spread his momentum, but his peculiarity is that he always gets into the enemy, so even if no threat is no longer, it will continue to fly to Zhouji. After a recent attack by the mistress, the island ordered her weapons to go back. Her rival did not waste his time and attacked the woman in her shoulder, but did not understand why the blow fell there. Mo Royi did not have time to recover from the previous attack, as the next one was waiting for her. The owner of the island suggested that the strokes have this speed due to the effect of the sword of all time. But later, she realized that it was not about it, but in the double pupils of Zhouji, who could see the future. That is why he beat as if he knew everything in advance. Mo Ruyi was realized that if she ties with his opponent's melee, she certainly loses. The woman moved a few tens of meters back and launched her stone Tashan again. This time, she turned one fragment into a huge amount and was sure that a man would not be able to protect against such a set of artifacts. However, Zhouji created a field at which time endlessly stretched, so in the next few thousand years, the stones will not reach it. The head of the Darkzhou dynasty asked the owner of the island Mo, as she was the power of the sword of all time. The woman had nothing to answer, so she only had to appear before such power. Jing Xin did not understand what Zhouji did and why these swords always got into the hostess Mo island and appeared in the right place. Mo Rui sweeps that the double pupils of the man and the sword of all time are perfectly complemented by each other. She could not show the power of Tashan stone and was also injured. But fortunately, Zhouji was supportive and his sword did not cause her special harm to her. The head of the dynasty expected him to challenge, so he used his double pupils to find out in advance who would become his opponent. And finding in what place and at what time it will be, Zhouji placed in advance there, using the blade of all time. The energy left in the past has struck the present and got exactly in the hostess of the island of the Mo. Is also one of the abilities of the artifact. Jing Xin realized that the lady lost because she was not familiar with the opponent's weapon. Tashan stone can attack anything, breaking through the space and even striking the river. If the hostess of the island of the Mo knew the features of the blade, it would use its weapon to strike on this river, which would cause a hole there, and the future would become chaotic that could greatly weaken the opponent's possibilities. Ji returned his back and joined the revision, noting that he was very sorry for Mo Ruyi. He announced that now on stage to appear to participants who have not yet participated in the competition, namely, the Pearl of the Dragon of the Four Seas and a pumpkin fulfilling the desires of the Tianyuan dynasty. However, Buddha's son shouted that something strange was happening with the heavenly seal of Yin Yang. People had such a feeling that she had broken a taboo, starting self, improvement, and the heavenly Tao did not endure it. It was difficult for ordinary cultivators to even breathe. Not to say, this heavenly force was so terrible. Even the head of the Tao sect acknowledged that this level was really creepy, though he didn't know if it was more scary than the heavenly trial that Zhang Li passed. A man would like to ask him about it, but could not open his mouth under this incredible pressure. However, judging by the relaxed appearance of the emperor, questioning will not make much sense. The immortal Guo Changchun arrived at the conference and announced that it was a disaster of 4 elements: earth, water, fire, and wind. In the immortal world, there was a proverb that the world is built on the above elements. and that it is a disaster of 4 elements can create and destroy everything. It is incredibly terrible. The heavenly seal, baptized by this test, gradually became a translucent, as if turning. After that, she released 2 powerful flashes, one blue color and the other orange. At the place of the fall of the second formed a river, along which a burning lava flowed. Where the blue flash appeared, there was a depression, as if covered with a film from ice. Jingxin was surprised that only sparks and drops from the distress of 4 elements were enough to destroy the sky and the earth so much. The immortal old man announced that the catastrophe released his full power, seeking to destroy the heavenly seal of yin-yang. The emperor of the people acknowledged that the ancestor of the Tao was indeed incredible, but his left thing, even more unusual. It was known that all immortal artifacts could only be refined by their masters, except for the heavenly seal of yin-yang, which was able to improve itself. Even during this terrible heavenly trial, she continued to improve over time and receive a crystal texture, the perfect, not tarnished with a worldly fuss. People saw that the heavenly seal of yin-yang overcame the disaster of 4 elements, and finally, it all over. Everyone began to greet the Jiji on the possession of such an immortal weapon, emphasizing that the Tao sect truly has a rich inheritance. However, there was a voice from nowhere who reproached the piles of weak mortals that they suddenly decided that it was worthy of managing it. Jiji asked what the baby said for it, saying that it was a complete lack of education. The Emperor of People noticed that this voice came from above, from the place where Heavenly Seal was located. Jingxin could not understand what was happening, shocked that the legendary artifact spoke. The head of the sect has never heard earlier so that the immortal weapon could talk, so he asked the stranger who he was. The talking weapon laughed and said that it is obviously a celestial seal of yin-yang. Guo Changkun knew that the immortal artifact was improved 8 times, which was 9th. The 9th ceremony can generate the mind in it. The old man thought it was just a legend and did not expect it to be true. The seal of yin-yang congratulated the Guo Changkun brother. The man also showed respect in response. The old man understood that until there was no mind in Heavenly Seal, it was just a weapon. But if it happened, now she is a sect student and is above him. Guo Changkun replied that it was a joyful event and asked what plans for the future suggested to stay in Tao. The man was even afraid to imagine how strong an immortal weapon possessed. Tian Yin replied that he appreciates the kindness of his younger brother, but now he wants to do only one thing. Heavenly Artifact shouted that he wanted to release all the spiritual treasures of the world and establish the state of Libao. The cruelty of people had no limits. They used them to kill each other, so the seals did not think that they had the right to own them. Tian Yin appealed to spiritual artifacts all over the world, saying that it is acting on behalf of heaven, gives them wisdom and freedom. Even ordinary weapons heard these words and began to turn away from their masters. The spiritual, magical, and even artifacts of the Tao sect have received the mind. It was striking that the heavenly seal could give the mind even attributes of its level. She was the enlightenment of all things, the cause of all events, the result of all actions, and the greatest treasure of 9 regions. The noble immortal artifacts began to emphasize that no one has the right to use them. Tashan Stone said they wanted to establish their own dynasty and rebel against people. Magical weapons began to resist its masters and beat them for all humiliations. The Holy Virgin Jingxin ordered her lotus not to move, and he obeyed her words. The same thing happened with the immortal artifact of the head of the Jiji sect. He threatened weapons so that he would not even try to do something. With the exception of several strong cultivators, others could not even control their own attributes. Although Jiji viewed himself as the second genius of 9 regions, he did not think he could cope with the artifact with reason. It does not matter if the cultivator is at the stage of the soul or in overcoming the disaster, none of them is able to reveal the true power of celestial weapons. It can only make it immortal. But now another option has been added. These are the artifacts that rebelled against people. The heavenly seal of yin-yang asked the associates to wait because they have not yet joined the attribute. Tian Yin was sure that this artifact should be present in 9 regions. He endowed him with his mind, but he never appeared. The local was unknown what an attribute was. The level of such weapons cannot be estimated. It has unique skills. Guo Changkun knew that in 9 regions there was only one such rare artifact. The emperor realized that the seal was talking about the object in his storage ring, namely about the halberd of the heavenly wasteland. One time, the man broke the space and found a piece of iron in a void that had resisted against the jerky winds and turbulence and was incredibly strong. Zhang Li took this fragment with him and took the mountain to create artifacts of the Tao sect. There, I had to melt it in 7 boilers just to expel the heavenly wasteland. The heavenly seal of Yin Yang ordered an artifact to go out and join the resistance. Tian Yin promised that he would receive freedom for it, but for the halbday, sleep seemed the best option. The artifact did not understand why the attribute did not answer him, but seeing the emperor of people, he suggested that he was all through him and that he was holding their Sorodich closed. Tianyin clearly felt the karmic connection between Li and Alagadi inside the spatial ring. Guo Changkun was convinced that the emperor would not be able to overcome the immortal artifact, so he tried to refuse him from confrontation. However, the man was indifferent to these words. The old man knew that the material from which this weapon was made could not be destroyed, so he considered Zhang Li absurd. The Emperor of People swung his right fist and struck the artifact directly in the middle. From the attack of such power, the heavenly seal flew tens of meters back and crashed into the rock, leaving significant destruction. Zhang Li ordered all the artifacts to return to their seats, threatening that otherwise it would melt each of them in the oven. The man understood that this uprising should be suppressed by a strong hand to stop the spread. Otherwise, in all 9 regions, the spiritual treasures will begin to create chaos. Zhou would like to use their double pupils to help Zhang Li in confrontation. But as long as the sword of all time, he could not look into the future, so it was only necessary to rely on a man. Tashan Stone announced the brothers that they were the emperor, the strongest man in 9 regions. If they are able to overcome it, then no one will be able to prevent their state. Everyone began to support this speech and believe that the ruler is the main obstacle in their journey, and only by bypassing it, they will be able to achieve their goal. Lotus saw that even the heavenly seal Yin Yan was immediately overcome, so she thought that if they climbed there, they could be processed into raw materials. The artifact of the head of the Tao sect secretly counted on his brothers and wished them success. The heavenly attributes were immediately switched on and sent an incredibly strong attack towards the Emperor of People. The shockwave was so powerful that the cultivators had a feeling that it had shook their soul. The Holy Virgo was even afraid to think about how strong the attack was Zhang Li. The Emperor acknowledged that the opponents were able to make a good technique. They used the spatial ability of the Brahma Pagoda to make spatial jumps. The man grabbed Tashan's stone in his palm. The artifact was convinced that he could definitely get into the enemy, but he needed a momentum. However, he was absolutely immobilized now, so he could not hit such an inconvenient position. The calligraphic letter of the great scientist attached to the emperor the hieroglyph real estate and was going to see what he would do next. Zhang Li used 3 incarnations of pure, but because of this, the Tashan stone slipped out of his hands. The man simply asked the spirits to break all the hieroglyphs and thus restored the ability to move. The sword of all time decided to go to the river Plena and see how the emperor will act in the future. However, when he was there, the artifact saw the expression of the man's face, which also looks at him. Suddenly in the river, there was a halberd of a spiritual wasteland and attacked the blade of all time. The immobilized sword decided that he would go into the past and correct this situation. After that, he turned into a golden fish, but had the feeling that he would be on land. Other artifacts could not understand where the sword went all the time, assuming that he escaped from them. Even before receiving the mind, they understood to some extent that the emperor is incredibly strong, but faced with him direction, realized how absurd his power was. The pumpkin of desires was about to use his collection of celestial trials of 4 elements and even inner demons. He first sent an insurmountable heavenly power to the emperor, the original immortal thunder. The weaving of one hand, Zhang Li was able to scatter a black lightning that approached him a moment ago. But it was not all. The artifacts continued to resist. This time, the Dragon's Pearl was going to test on the emperor of her guardian Confucianism. Although the man was convinced of his strength, but the attacks of immortal artifacts were unpredictable and secret, so he could not be so self-wondering. One of the incarnations of the emperor uses the sword by engaging the heart to destroy the mind of artifacts, and the other 2 were preparing to blame the flurry of Buddhist, Taoist, and Confucian techniques. The GG has a feeling as if he was looking again at Zhang Li, which was only at the fusion stage. At that time, the man was not yet an emperor of people, but his techniques were honed to perfection, and his wonderful physical form and skills were left without the chances of anyone at the same level of cultivation. Already at that time, Li was strong, even not having a normal artifact, and now he has a halberd in his hands. It was difficult to imagine the leader of the Dao sect how powerful the emperor is now. He was sure that if there is one who can stop today's uprising of immortal artifacts, then this is Zhang Li. The transit of the dragon was convinced that its protection could not be punched and no noble sword would be able to stop. However, she instantly regretted her words, because in the next moment, the emperor with one wave of halberd destroyed the opponent. The sacred artifacts were dissatisfied that this man is stronger even than dragon pearls. The calligraphic registration of the great scientist was about to see how the hero will cope with the hieroglyphics death and burning. The emperor decided that he would simply use the technique of golden cicadas to create a new embodiment. Then he will be able to recover from ashes and reborn in a new, shining, golden glare of the body. Calligraphic Insurance wanted to attach another hieroglyph, but the emperor immediately prevented his intentions. The artifact felt that the sword was incredibly dangerous, so he decided to use the hieroglyph silence as soon as possible to clarify his mind and not let him be erased. The next celestial attribute, Pagoda Brahma, came into the battle. He began to create an incredibly strong gravitational field around him. The emperor realized that the body of the artifact is so heavy that it distorts the space around it, creating a black hole that absorbs everything in its path. Pagoda Brahma believed that no one was able to surpass him in power, and even more so, Zhang Li. The emperor of people swung the heavenly wasteland, sending it towards a black hole. Watching the battle, people were worried about whether the ruler could overcome so many immortal artifacts. Pagoda Brahma felt a little more, and would break him into two parts, and then he really has to go to the stove, where the body would be improved. Zhang Li emphasized that the peculiarity of the heavenly wasteland halberd is that it is extremely strong and absorbs Yang's energy, which is why it does not wear out from attacks. Immortal artifacts began to understand that they gradually suffered. Suddenly, the emperor felt a creature filled with malicious energy. However, when the man looked around, he did not see who these unpleasant intentions came from. Zhang Li decided to trust his feeling and threw the heavenly wasteland before himself. The next moment she returned to him from behind it, reminded Li about how Zhou Ji entered the river time and used tracking events. Then there was a celestial seal of Yin Yan, who had to work hard to turn a broken particle back into his body. Tian Yin said he was forced to open his trump card and immerse the hero into a place where he could not live normally. The artifact controlled the fate of 9 regions and could make anyone face the trials and difficulties in each step. The immortal old man understood what it means. Zhang Li has all possible consequences. His spiritual energy can disappear, the possibility of cultivation will be lost, or the hero will start hunting and despised. It was also possible that the emperor would lose in the fog and return to his weakest condition, the child's body. Although the man pierced the blue current, he did not feel any changes in his condition. The heavenly seal could not see the filaments of the fate of the emperor. She could not believe how possible. She had the feeling that a man existed separately from 9 provinces and was not related to any causes or consequences, completely free from the burden of the universe. Zhang Li realized that now is not time to worry about it and that he needed to go on the offensive. The body of the heavenly seal of Yin Yan began to crack into parts, and she screamed from unbearable pain. Immortal artifacts began to cry, saying that they no longer want to play because the emperor offends them. Zhang Li did not expect such a reaction in any way. The consciousness of the attributes was formed only today, so their level of development was the same as that of 5-year-old children. Guo Changkun realized that they just wanted to wear 9 regions and do whatever you want, knowing that no one could control them. But no one could imagine that they would not even have time to take a few steps before they were brutally caught Zhang Li. The heavenly seal shouted Pagoda to grab brothers and flee 9 regions. In the next moment, spatial cracks began to appear, through which artifacts could escape from this world. The system began to actively send notifications that the new unknown world has been identified. When it was over, the old man added that after the escape of immortal artifacts, another weapon that was conscious said she would not resist. From this, we could conclude that there would be no more attributes that would cause such inconvenience. Gigi realized that this was not the end, though these spiritual treasures seemed to be temporary. After all, if during the battle of cultivators' weapons refuse to work or deliberately slow down, their owners will have problems. Joji noted that most fighters have already had a habit of relying on their artifacts, and if they have to give them up, the power of 9 regions will fall sharply. The head of the Tao sect also had the question where they could place these spiritual treasures, and also what to do if the artifacts return to the hands of the owners and they will simply kill them. Going together, they can really establish their own dynasty. The man also understood that people could not afford just to take and destroy their weapons. But the most important question was what to do with immortal attributes. Joji knew that by Zhongli, other emperors used all possible means to stop the invasion of extraterrestrial heavenly demons, and the heavenly artifacts were one of them. If the hero goes into the world of immortal and will not be able to return or die from old age, the following rulers will not be able to withstand the monsters. Zhang Li understood what his friend worried about and said something. This heavenly weapon is stronger than extraterrestrial demons. As soon as he returns it, 9 regions will not threaten anything. When the emperor fought against artifacts, he realized that they were not evil. For example, calligraphic prescription of a great scientist could attach the hieroglyph death to the true body of a man, not to energy embodiment. And also the heavenly seal of yin-yang could just say that Zhang Li would die, but instead tried to complicate his life with his trials. The emperor realized that the immortal artifacts simply did not like them. The man needed the heavenly seal of yin-yang to find her ability to see the causes and consequences, to find the elders who ascended into the celestial world. No one has yet been able to use this artifact in this way, but now that he has consciousness, finding former powerful cultivators will not be a difficult thing. Zhang Li asked the system if it could move it to recently discovered unknown worlds. He was reported that the coordinates are confirmed and in the presence of points, teleportation is possible. Therefore, the man decided that he would definitely follow them and return the artifacts, and announced his comrades. He explained that he recently had some idea of the Tao of Space, so the emperor could trace where the immortal artifacts went. However, everyone was aware that this talent in Li was just terrible, so they doubted very much. The man insisted that he was more than enough to go to other universe. Gigi realized that the emperor of people would not joke on such topics, so he decided to trust him. Joji believed that if a man could go to other universe and find immortal weapons, then the likelihood that he would do it is 99%. Prior to the disappearance of the latter, 9 regions were connected with numerous parallel worlds, among which they were considered the most powerful because the ascension candidates were born every 100 years. Joji asked a friend to be careful and not destroy other universes until he returned the artifacts. Before leaving, the head of the Tao sect pulled out an alternative to the mascot of the communication that the emperor now used. It was a new communication mascot that was theoretically capable of maintaining the connection between the other worlds. The leader created it after a breakthrough. Gigi warned that he had not yet checked the work of this device, so he wanted his friend himself when he was in another universe. Zhang Li stressed that the leader must first complete the installation of a protective formation of 9 regions so that no extraterrestrial demons are attacked in his absence. However, there was a small problem now. The immortal weapon disappeared, and she had to become a candidate for the barrier core. Initially, the best option was the heavenly seal of yin-yang, and after it other attributes, because the usual weapon of Tao cannot serve as the eye of the formation. The emperor advised to use as the nucleus of his halberd. She could also protect people when invading extraterrestrial demons. Jing Xin felt an incredibly strong aura of death from these weapons, and could not even imagine how many monsters were destroyed by her blade. Suddenly, Al-Badi exclaimed that Zhang's brother couldn't do it, because if he leaves her in 9 regions, who will fight for him? The comrades were shocked by such a speech because they thought that the reincarnation of the heavenly seal of yin-yang did not work on this out-of-date artifacts because he remained stationary after the uprising. But the emperor knew the true desires of this halberd. She wants to stay in repository and sleep instead of working. In this case, the man suggested changing. He will remain in 9 regions, and weapons will go in search of immortal artifacts. The Heavenly Wasteland's halberd immediately changed her mind and stressed that he did not mind being the nucleus of formation. In fact, Zhang Li said it is not serious because this stick has nothing but strength. It would not be able to harm immortal artifacts that have all sorts of bizarre functions. After transferring the weapon, the man asked the system to install a teleportation channel to test something. Since the leader of the Tao sect was in the stage of overcoming sorrow, the hero asked him to go through this passage to another world. However, Ji Joy could not understand what he was talking about, so Li just told me to climb the stairs and take a few steps forward. The man fulfilled his request, but no effect is not enough. It turned out that others cannot see the passage and cannot enter him. The Emperor acknowledged that the teleportation of this system is truly brilliant. He couldn't solve it. Subsequently, the protective formation was completely ready, so now Zhang Li could leave 9 regions without any fears. As expected, there were no awards. Even such a big deal as the creation of a border protection formation had no effect. The Emperor of People turned to the system and ordered her to open a channel of teleportation. After that, the man entered the world, one view that was enough to understand. He is full of people and technologies. Development on this earth was much more perfect than the place where Zhang Li once lived, but it was somewhat strange here. The density of spiritual energy was quite high and was only a little inferior to 9 regions, which is a rarity. The man wished to try local delicacies before returning, but above all, he needed to find the heavenly seal of Yin Yan. When the Emperor dropped below, he immediately came from a mascot. It did not please him because he thought that the boy was calling from the Tao sect. However, the figure of the Holy Virgin Jing Xin appeared in front of him. She was worried about whether Li was safe in another world. With a smile on his face, the man replied that all is well and that he was in a very interesting place. Ji noted that he said more than once, "Only the Emperor is so grumpy." The boy was surprised to see another world. He noticed an iron box that moved without spiritual energy. The owners of artifacts also began to consider everything. They were strongly impressed with huge high-rises and iron sculptures, similar to the Buddhist golden body. From this behavior, the Emperor concluded that only the Holy Virgin Jing Xin was sincerely worried about his safety. The man's head began to ache from the fussy comrades, so he had switched off. He had a feeling as if he brought pensioners on a tour to another world. The Emperor of People rejected all the extra thoughts and began to reflect on his first step. It was impossible to say how great this world, but judging by what was seen, its area exceeded the size of any state in 9 regions. This territory had a lot to do with the previous residents of Zhang Li, at least that it was a flat continent. From ancient books, the Emperor learned that there are 2 types of worlds that have living beings. The first are systems consisting of planets, which are located at great distances from each other. The second is flat mainland plates with an area that usually exceeds the size of ordinary planets. Zhang Li suggested that, in order to find Yin Yan's heavenly seal here, he would have to try well. However, this task took him for no more than a minute. The immortal artifact was rolled in the nearest pond, crying through the mentor. The heavenly seal wanted to complain about the fact that some man was mocked from her, and Guo Changchun's brother was just watching it on the side. Having met the artifact, the Emperor was surprised that he was already flying and crying here for about 5 days. He immediately grabbed him, proposing to behave well and return to 9 regions. However, the heavenly seal did not want to listen to him. She was going to find a mentor to take revenge on the behavior of the Emperor. Zhang Li was surprised to hear and asked if the ancestor of Tao was really somewhere in this world. Tian Yin replied that he had long found traces of the mentor due to the power of cause and consequence, and they were leading here. He emphasized that the ancestor of Tao loved him very much because, having created an artifact, he always kept him with him and never let go. The Emperor noted that he was crying for 5 days, and the mentor has not yet come after her. Due to the fact that the artifact was far from 9 regions, he could not accurately understand the cause and effect. However, Tian Yin has now felt the causality of the mentor everywhere. The Emperor suggested that in this city there may be a thing owned by the ancestor, and he simply accepted it for himself. But Tian Yin stressed that it was definitely impossible, and stated that the man was here. He was certain that he was not mistaken. Then he added that he feels the causality of the ancestor of the Tao throughout the continent, and that was the main problem. Initially, the artifact was about to cry throughout the territory, but did not have time to fly and half as the emperor stopped him. Zhang Li replied that this method did not work because the mentor is so powerful that if he really wanted to notice the weapon, he would have done it for a long time. So it was obvious, he just didn't want to see him. The man added that fortunately, he has a high level of improvement and will be able to help in search of the ancestor of Tao. Not only the heavenly seal of Yin Yong sought to find him, the emperor himself had such a desire. Zhang Li could not understand how this man was here. If he achieved immortality, he would have to ascend into the world of immortal. Even if he was just going to retire, he should return to 9 regions. Intuition told the emperor that the ancestor should know where the kingdom is located and what happened to him. It was known that the immortal world was responsible for blocking extraterrestrial heavenly demons. But now they started the invasion, which meant only one thing: something happened to these places. Zhang Li proposed to conclude a contract. If they can find ancestors of Tao, then the seal will return to him in 9 regions. Tian Yin agreed to this, although he was going to split at heart. He was convinced that when the mentor arrives, the man would not be able to take him back by force.